against the ills of our society, we can build a better nation. One youth, one South Africa.
We are live from Johannesburg. Very good morning to you. It's a beautiful day here in the city of gold, and we're going to be with you, bringing you all the latest. Elvis, and it's a big day, isn't it?
It's a massive day today, Eben. We're going to the Constitutional Court. We're going to find out what is that ruling today. Can we vote in a secret ballot in Parliament?
Yeah, we've asked you guys to conduct a poll and to tell us what you think. Should this ballot be in secret, Kendall? And so now it's something that people are very interested in.
Clearly, 205 votes already in. It's only been up for an hour, and 85% of those 205 are saying yes, they want to see a secret ballot.
Yes, but it's not for you or me to decide. The Constitutional Court judges, the full bench, will tell us what they think. Freddie Whitehorn tweets us out.
He says, take a look at the numbers. South Africans want a secret ballot. Why deny us?
Yep. Mystic Man.
He comes in with yes for secret ballot. It will ease the pressure for Zuma's camp, who use their stomach instead of their brain to think.
Okay, keep tweeting us on this question. Yeah, 85% of you are telling us that yes, you want a secret ballot. Of course, today, full bench of the Constitutional Court will make that informed decision. It is obvious.
But we're also on a taxi ride today, Eben. We're speaking to meter taxi drivers. They're very upset about Uber taking over their business. We've seen the minibus taxis also going on strike, and that's why we're focusing today on the industry as such.
Yeah, there's also a threat of massive rolling action by the minibus taxi drivers on the 12th of July, like they did last week, Kendall. So this is a question we're asking our viewers.
Absolutely. We'd like to see from you, what do you think about this? What changes would you like to see in the taxi industry?
Would you like to see a cashless environment? What would you like to see? This one from Katlejo, obviously.
He says the transport minister should intervene. These Toyota Quantums are very expensive. Their installments, 7,000 Rand and more, and they get repossessed if you skip a month. It's unfair.
Interesting view there. Alex Motapo tweets us. He says this industry is big. They can have their own garages. They can have their own petrol stations also. Interesting view there.
Well, that is what happened many years ago during apartheid when that happened. When small businesses started their own petrol stations.
Yes, and Trevor comes in with, I want to see the complete formalization and regulation of the industry.
Yeah, it's been many attempts. Many attempts have been made. Of course, in both sectors we see threats of violence, violent incidents and the like. The safety of commuters always seems to be a problem. So we'll deal with that and the Constitutional Court this morning. We should be live there in a couple of minutes. Yeah, 10 o'clock we'll be live there. But we've got a sports question today, and it was a bit of a pumping that the Proteas took last night.
Yeah, a bit of a pasting it was, and we're asking you today, what do you make of the performance of the Proteas last night?
Was it AB or was it AZ? I'm not too sure.
It was,
maybe the end.
It was close to the end. What are you guys tweeting us?
Katejo says, I'm not happy. I guess it's our season of losing. We will come around eventually. We do have a good team. I always have hope on these guys, or these boys.
Good to see that there is hope. Tisetso says to us, slight improvement from the Proteas. They just lack that thing. What is that thing?
We all know what that thing is. We've spoken at length about it. Barry Martin says, I don't know what to say, but there's definitely something wrong.
Something is wrong. Something amiss within the Protea camp right now. Some say it's leadership. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we've got a lot of news to get through. It seems as if the world has happened in South Africa in the last 24 hours. Let's get straight into our work.
The Constitutional Court will today rule whether a secret ballot can be allowed during a vote of no confidence against the President Jacob Zuma. The State of Capture report is expected to take center stage when President Jacob Zuma take oral questions in Parliament today. And the meter taxi strike that was expected to affect many routes in and around Gauteng today has been called off. You heard it first on the Newsroom. Those are all your news headlines, but before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamata what's happening on the sports front. Somebody said on the tweet there that something is wrong. It reminded me of a song, There's Something Wrong With My Baby. Is that the case?
That's right, Elvis Presley. Not a happy morning.
Lots of big babies around, it seems, at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Not a happy morning for for Proteas fans, for South African sporting fans. Not a great day. Good morning to you. This is what we'll bring to you in the sports today.
Well, England, it's a counter.
The Proteas get a 9-wicket pasting by England in their first match after a dismal ICC Champions Trophy campaign.
That's a shellacking. Sure is a complete performance from England.
I don't know if I would have done anything different. Just a couple of good shots there, and maybe we missed our mark a couple of times as well.
Winless Platinum Stars' hopes of advancing in the CAF Confederations Cup have all but evaporated as they get held to a 1-0 draw by Tunisian side CS Sfaxien.
Thomas. Well, that was so clear. Boxall had his shirt nearly dragged off his back. And New Zealand are getting a bit frustrated. That's not going to help their cause late on.
The video assistance refereeing system remains under the spotlight as match officials fail to deal effectively with a mass brawl in Mexico's 2-1 victory over New Zealand.
And it is a yellow.
Yesterday I had a chat with Il Professore about all of this, but we'll carry on this discussion with him later on next week. All this and more later on the Sports Bulletin. For now, it's back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. The Constitutional Court will rule today on whether a secret ballot can be allowed during a vote of no confidence against the President, Jacob Zuma. The United Democratic Movement brought the court application following the President's controversial cabinet midnight reshuffle in March. The application is also supported by a number of other opposition parties and civil society groupings. The UDM leader, Bantu Olomisa, says they are confident the court will rule in their favor.
Is that the Constitutional Court can rule and direct the Speaker that indeed in terms of Section 6 of number so-and-so, you do have powers. Therefore, leave the Constitutional Court alone. So if we win, and then there is a secret ballot, ANC must act. I'm not going to plead them or go and lobby them.
Well, there you have it. Now, a little bit later, we'll be going live to the Constitutional Court. But Eben will be also joined by our reporter that's at the Con Court to give us a sort of overview of it as to what can we expect today. Yeah,
we'll be live with Aldrin in about 5 to 10 minutes' time to give us an update. Also to speak to some of the stakeholders there, because there are lots of friends of the court and the like outside the courthouse. But 10 o'clock, we're expecting to be live to hear this sort of landmark ruling. I think the countdown is kind of started since yesterday a little bit, and there's lots of expectations. But before we get to that, let's finish up with the news, and then we can get into that.
And also we'll be speaking to Professor Friedman in a short while about that. So let's get to the news first and get that out of the way. President Jacob Zuma is expected to take oral questions in the House today, including ones on the State of Capture report, government's nuclear building plans, and an increase in joblessness. President Zuma will update the nation through Parliament on the persistent global economic challenges and government's efforts in addressing the country's economic challenges, as well as the impact of the recent downgrading of South Africa's credit rating by the ratings agencies. The President will also respond to questions on the government's program of radical socio-economic transformation, government's position on the nuclear new build program, and new initiatives to address unemployment. Meanwhile, the Auditor General, Kimi Makwetu, says that municipalities will continue to waste money unless there are consequences for the officials responsible. Irregular expenditure by municipalities over the past financial year has shot up by, listen to this, over 50% and amounts to 16.8 billion rand. Now, he says this is the highest amount since the tracking of irregular expenditure began.
Auditor General Kimi Makwetu dishing out the debt on municipal financial management for the year ended June last year. He says 80% of municipalities in the Western Cape received clean audits last year, up from 73%. This is compared with 18% of municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal and 16% in the Eastern Cape. The bad news is the rate of irregular expenditure, which is money spent without following proper procedures and the law, shot up by 50%. 65% of all municipalities are now in financial dire straits and require urgent help or intervention.
There are generous, liberal decisions that go towards buy this even if you don't have a budget against it. It puts pressure in the whole system in terms of where you're going to get the money to pay for it.
But the national government was quick to point out that not all municipalities are dismal when it comes to proper financial management.
There's a group of about 12, slightly more, that are persistent. They've had disclaimers for more than 5 years in a row. And I think for us as a department, together with our partners, SALGA and National Treasury, those are the municipalities that we really, really want to hone in on, where we want to make it very clear that there must be leadership, and in the absence of that leadership and the absence of results, there must be consequences.
For its part, the South African Local Government Association says it's prepared to work with the country's law enforcement agencies to fight corruption in municipalities. Mbongeni Mutua, SABC News, Pretoria.
Yes, indeed, breaking news. The meter taxi strike in Gauteng province has now been called off. This has been confirmed by the spokesperson for meter taxis in Gauteng, Ruben Mazayia. Meter taxi drivers, during an earlier interview we had with him, he says that the meter taxis in and around Johannesburg were expected to go on strike, but that has been called off. Now, there have been tensions between the meter taxis and Uber drivers in the past few months. Meter taxi drivers are complaining that Uber is pricing them out of the market.
We heard last night that is called off, so it's no longer there or for now.
Who called it off?
Pardon?
Who called it off?
No, the leadership and the coordinators, because of certain reasons.
What are the reasons?
No, those are secret to us, because each and every organization have got its own secrets. But the issue is that it's no longer on. Let's put it there.
Okay,
yes.
But why were you going to strike in the first place?
There are many issues. The first one is that, let me put it this way and maybe show you here. The government have confirmed and pronounced that Uber is illegal. That is from the Department of Transport as a response after the blockage at the airport. Now, from us is, if the Uber, the government say is illegal, it's just an IT company as a pronouncement, why is it still operating? And now, secondly, let me put it this way. On the 21st of September last year, we went to Parliament to make a presentation. In our presentation, the issue of Uber was a priority. But the government admitted that Uber is illegal, but said technology, and we agreed that we don't have a problem with technology. We are prepared. Personally, we are opening up an app now. By the end of this year, meter taxi will have their own app, which will be national.
Well, there'll be more on that interview at 10 o'clock. We'll play you the entire interview with the Meter Taxi Association. Right now, the Northwest High Court in Mahikeng will deliver judgment regarding bail granted to the two Kolini men accused of killing 16-year-old Mahlomola Mosweu for allegedly stealing sunflowers. 26-year-old Peter Durwaard and 34-year-old Philip Skitter were each granted bail by the Kolini Magistrates Court last month. The granting of bail sparked widespread protests, which resulted in the torching and destruction of local businesses and the torching of houses. The death of the teenager caused racial polarization in Kolini. But the focus today is on our poll. Let's take a look at that poll and what the numbers suggest right now. Right here on your screen, we're asking you, do you want to see a secret ballot on the no confidence vote? Well, so far, 205 votes. In Eben, there is 85% of the majority of South Africans and people on the continent that are suggesting that they want to see that secret vote, and only 15% are saying no.
Yeah, I don't think we're surprised by those numbers, I was, to be honest, because I think that's the kind of sentiment people want to see this thing happen in Parliament. Of course, it's a full bench of judges that have that decision to make, and it's only for us to speculate, I think, and for members of the public to voice their concerns and their opinions. But do we have some tweets on that? Yeah, we do, actually. Barry Martin tweets us, obviously says, the no-confidence vote is a secret ballot vote, should be the best way to get rid of those corrupt Parliament leaders. Barry Martin says.
This one from Alex Madapo. He says, yes, it will help the African National Congress MPs to vote according to their wish.
Lechasa says, yes, I really want to see that secret ballot. Yes, you're not the only one. 85% of 205 votes. More of you have voted already. We'll update that poll and come back to you with the results as the show develops. Of course, we're live at the Constitutional Court at 10 o'clock. That's inside, but we're outside the Constitutional Court as well. Now, Aldrin St-Pierre is there talking to all relevant stakeholders about the no-confidence vote that will be ruled on in Parliament this morning. Very good morning to you, Aldrin. I know you've got some stakeholders with you, but just set the scene for us there. Is there a sort of buoyant, expectant mood outside the courthouse?
Well, certainly expectations running high this morning as we wait for judgment to be handed down whether the Speaker of Parliament does have discretionary powers in terms of allowing a secret ballot in a motion of no confidence against the President, but also whether Section 102 of the Constitution, the omission of the word secret vote or the word secret vote means prohibition. And that's an argument that has been put forward by the UDM, the main applicants in this matter, saying that for the mere fact that the Constitution doesn't say that there should be a secret ballot when voting against President of the country, it doesn't mean that it is prohibited. And also, of course, the powers of the Speaker of Parliament. I'm going to bring through the main applicant at the moment, and Ngabayam Zimkwanga from the UDM. Just quickly, we're running a snap poll currently, and the results that just came back now. The snap poll is, would you like to see a secret ballot? And of the respondents, a whopping 85% of the people say that they want to see a secret ballot. What does this mean for you?
No, it's good. It vindicates us a great deal. It means that we're on the right track with this application. It means that even our people at home, South Africans, realize that it's important for us to exercise our democratic rights as members of Parliament in secret, to choose. If you can elect a president, for example, in secret, why can't you then remove the very same president via secret ballot? It makes no sense. But obviously we understand that there are other nitty-gritties that the judges would have to consider. From where we're sitting, I think we've done everything we could in terms of our application. We argued it very well. Our lawyers did an exceptional job trying to argue our case. Now we can only hope and pray for an outcome that favors us as a party and the collective of the opposition.
Would you say that, considering the main reason that the UDM made this application, that even a catastrophe that would lead, obviously, that would stem from the entire cabinet resigning, all members of cabinet and deputy ministers, after this motion of no confidence against the president happens to be successful, if that does happen, would you say that that is a price that the country should be willing to pay to rectify some of the issues that you have highlighted that have come forward in terms of under President Jacob Zuma's leadership?
Well, if we want to begin the process of rebuilding South Africa sooner rather than later, we'll have to get rid of most of the executive of President Zuma. We were there before when former President Thabo Mbeki was removed, albeit unconstitutionally in 2008. And as a country, we managed to survive because we're very strong. And obviously, the Constitution does make provisions for that, to say you will be able to have, I think, the Speaker acting for a quite number of days until an appointment is made of the President or election of the President together with the Cabinet and so on. So I'm sure the country will be able to survive that. There would be plans in place to make sure that there's no instability. We would have to, as leaders, to find whatever mechanisms we can use to make sure that things are operating in order.
Secret vote or open vote, whichever way it goes, quite important for the opposition parties is whether they'll have some support from the ANC's benches.
Well, we are very optimistic that some of our ANC colleagues, especially the ordinary members of Parliament, will support us. We're not banking on and members of the executive to do that. Remember, they are conflicted because if a decision is taken to remove them, it means they are also going to be removed from the executive. But over the past few months, or few weeks rather, we've had good conversations with ordinary MPs who, some of them would like to vote in our favor, even though they get intimidated on a daily basis. So we're going to keep trying to persuade our colleagues to see the importance of doing this for the country rather than focusing on narrow partisan interests.
Does that boost the level of confidence that you will be successful in eventually removing President Jacob Zuma? Also considering what has been happening inside the ANC and the NEC, and the Secretary General of the ANC saying that the party will be closing ranks should that motion of no confidence be debated in Parliament?
Well, I suppose that is a good political statement to make in public. But there are a lot of things happening in, the factional battles in the ANC. I'm aware of discussions in other factions of the ANC which are adamant that they will vote in favor of the motion of no confidence should a secret ballot be provided for them.
Well, certain factions within inside the ANC would also play a key role in determining whether President Jacob Zuma steps down or is removed as president of the country, and probably not as president of the ANC, considering that the party is heading into its elective conference in the next 6 months. I'm bringing in the DA's James Self quickly. They are not an applicant to this matter, but quite important, though, is that the DA has experienced what happens when there is a secret motion. A secret ballot is being casted and a motion of no confidence, whether it be against the president, but in your case, it was against the mayor, Mogale City. Just explain to us what happened in that case.
Well, in that case, the speaker had discretion, and the speaker believed that he wanted to give a secret ballot. And then what happened was that the motion was carried, which meant that one of our members had in fact voted for the motion of no confidence. Now, that may be his democratic right, but it's also very important in a constitutional democracy, and particularly one that has a list system, that people who vote for a political party know how their representatives voted. So in our view, a secret ballot should only be used in exceptional circumstances and where there is definite evidence that people are being intimidated or in other ways threatened to vote in particular ways.
On those exceptional circumstances applicable both in the President Jacob Zuma case and probably against the case against the mayor in Mogale City as well, because there have been accusations that have been brought by the ANC in that municipality?
Well, they may very well, but those need to be substantiated. So if any member of the ANC, for that matter, believes that they are being unduly intimidated, then they must produce the proof, and the Speaker must exercise her discretion and then decide whether or not to have a secret ballot. In other words, it cannot be decided up front. It needs to be decided on the basis of the evidence before the Speaker.
Well, there's this issue around the intimidation before the ballot is held, but there's also the repercussions of once you cast the vote. And the DA, for instance, in Mogale City, decided to go through a lie detector test and try and find out and ascertain who exactly this person is who voted voted in support of the ANC's motion of no confidence against the mayor. Isn't that a bit of a quagmire, considering the arguments that you've just made at this moment?
Well, it wasn't the DA that decided that. The individual members of the caucus decided voluntarily.
Those are DA members.
Sure.
Those are DA members.
But it wasn't a decision of the party. It was a decision that they took because the collegiality of the caucus had been undermined. But my point is this, about the motion of no confidence at least. We can tell you up front now that whether we have a secret ballot or not a secret ballot, the DA will be voting for the motion of no confidence. We don't need a secret ballot to know that all our members will be doing that. And we've brought this motion. We want that motion to be debated as quickly as possible, because for every minute that Mr. Jacob Zuma is the President of South Africa, this country goes backwards.
And just quickly, on the Mogale City one, you mentioned that in that matter, the Speaker felt that he has discretionary power, she has discretionary power. I wonder whether that sets precedence then, that if that happens at a local governance level, at a council level, shouldn't it also be applicable at the legislature level of Parliament?
Well, that's entirely the danger of the precedent, because in the case of the Speaker of Mogale City, I don't think there were sufficient grounds or sufficiently well made out grounds to justify a secret ballot, which in our view should only be used in exceptional circumstances.
Quick one, just a question that I ask Ngabayom Zikwankwa from the UDM is in terms of section 102 or subsection 2, which says if there's a motion of no confidence against the president successfully, he resigns and his entire cabinet resigns as well, including the deputy ministers. Is that a price that this country must be willing to pay to get rid of the president, based on some of the accusations that you guys have leveled against him in Parliament, and based on some of the allegations that he's facing also inside the ANC?
Well, he is the captain of the team. If the captain is removed, then the team must go. I don't think it's a train smash for South Africa. In fact, it's probably very good for South Africa. We need a new team, but ultimately we need a new government. And that is why we are putting all our efforts into preparing for 2019.
Well, certainly 2019, big focus there. 2 years from now, as we head to the elections, before we head to the elections, and many will be looking quite closely as to what happens during those elections, and some believe that the ANC's support could be dwindling even further, considering the internal battles that the party is facing, but also the allegations of corruption. But quite important today is the motion of no confidence, whether a secret ballot would be allowed and whether the Speaker of Parliament does have discretionary power, and judgment is expected to be handed down around about 10 o'clock this morning.
Aldrin, thank you very much. Of course, Aldrin will be at the Constitutional Court for the rest of the morning, giving us updates, but also interesting views and reaction as it comes in from outside the courthouse. We're running a poll, gauging your views, your opinion. What are you guys saying? Do you want to see a secret ballot on the no confidence vote in the Parliament? 242 of you have voted now. 84%. The overwhelming majority are saying, yes, we want a secret ballot. Of course, the chief tweets us. He says, waste of the court's time by the UDM and company, says the Mokwele chief. Artwell Mtandazo says to us, let it be an open ballot so that we truly see if we have conscience in our parliament. It's easy to rig the secret ballot through bribes. Proudly Koi Koi says, I want to see those who stand up against their party and those who are loyal towards their party, talking about the secret ballot, and they put a different spin, totally different spin on the matter. Of course, one of the key considerations will be the threat of violence that's been made, apparently or allegedly, against some members of Parliament. It'll be interesting to hear what the Prof has to say. Elvis is standing by with, well, what will be some interesting views. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Eben. And, of course, Professor Friedman is joining us here this morning. Professor, political analyst, you're joining us. Give us your thoughts, first and foremostly, the UDM's confidence in perhaps getting their request granted of a secret ballot.
Well, I think their confidence is probably misplaced. I'd be very surprised if the Constitutional Court instructed the Speaker to hold a secret ballot. They may well say that the Speaker has a right to do that, which he probably has, but I don't think that they would go much further than that. More importantly, I think in the interests of South African democracy, I very much hope that the confidence is misplaced, because I think that we will be in serious trouble as a country if the Constitutional Court rules that there should be a secret ballot, because I think our democracy would be in trouble, and I think that, as one of your viewers pointed out, it would be an invitation to corruption if the secret ballot is allowed to go forward.
Is that the only setback that could happen, that there will be a lot of corruption if this is granted?
Well, no. I mean, as you've heard the story that Mr. Self of the DA was talking about in Mogale City, you can have a situation in which voters don't know whether the people that they voted for are actually doing what they want them to do. At the moment, the voters of Mogale City do not know who the person was who changed their vote to change their ballot. They do not know, therefore, whether they want that person to be on the ballot next time. You know, if you say that there should be a secret ballot in one case, then there are always good reasons for secret ballots in another case. And you land up in a situation where the voters of this country, who are the most important people in a democracy, do not know how the people they elected voted. And that is not good for the democratic system at all.
Are you then suggesting that a secret ballot is undemocratic?
Yes, a secret ballot in Parliament is undemocratic. We need a secret ballot in our elections because we're individuals. We might be bullied, we might be intimidated. But this idea that members of Parliament are intimidated, if they're intimidated violently, that's a matter for the police. The police must protect them. It's illegal to intimidate people violently. If they're threatened with the loss of their posts, well, that's how politics works. If you want to go into party politics, there's no law which says that you have a guaranteed job. If you do what the party leadership doesn't want and you get thrown out, well, then you appeal to the voters.
Isn't that unparliamentary, though, where MPs are being threatened or intimidated for...
Okay, threatening and intimidating MPs is absolutely unacceptable in a democracy, but you have to ask yourself, what is the remedy? You know, if somebody is behaving badly in Parliament, we don't say, let's scrap Parliament. If somebody is trying to prevent democracy operating properly, you don't say, let's scrap democracy. So if there is any sort of intimidation which is illegal, I mean, to say to somebody, if you vote in a particular way, you will lose your job in the cabinet. That's not intimidation. That's politics. If you say, as been alleged, we will burn your house down, or we will attack you, or you will attack your family, that's a crime, and the person must go to jail.
Now, you've seen our poll this morning, and we're asking that question if people want to see a secret ballot. So far, 84% are saying yes, they want to see it. So public interest in this case is very important. Now, from the Concord perspective, are they perhaps under pressure considering the public interest in the matter?
Well, I think the first thing with respect to your poll, the last figures I heard is that you have 240 people participating in your poll. There are, in fact, 50 million South Africans, not 240 South Africans. We have no idea whether your poll is representative of public opinion or not. The only way we could decide what was representative of public opinion is to have a referendum on the issue.
Is a referendum the answer, though, to this particular question?
Look, the point is, my opinion is that this is damaging to a democracy. The way in which democracies work is constitutions have to be changed by 2/3. Because if you don't have constitutions changed by 2/3, then they get changed by the mood, and people change the constitution, and then they realize afterwards they made a mistake. If the constitutions are changed by 2/3, if 2/3 of the public of South Africa vote that they want a secret ballot, we have to have a secret ballot. But those of us who think it's a threat to democracy would continue to warn the people of South Africa that you're creating a problem. Because besides the question of just not knowing, as we mentioned a moment ago, what is to stop somebody buying votes? And we all know that that's a huge problem at the moment. So the person's vote is bought. We never know that the person's vote is bought because we never know which way the person voted.
So let's play off the scenario. If the Concord grants the UDM's application to have the secret ballot, what will it mean for South Africa?
Well, first of all, just as an aside, and that's just a view as an analyst rather than as somebody who's concerned about democracy, I think it won't make any difference to the outcome of the vote at all. It so happens that the way in which the system of in Parliament works is that if you really want to know the way somebody voted in a secret ballot, you can find out because of the electronic voting system. But even if that was not the case, we would then be in a situation where we would have repeated requests for secret ballots. We would have a situation in which South Africans wouldn't know how their representatives voted, and we would have a situation in which vultures would start swooping on Parliament to see which MPs vote they can buy in particular issues, safe in the knowledge that the public will never know who that MP was.
What would be the perfect scenario, you think?
Well, the perfect scenario is that we make sure that people can vote their conscience without any threat. And as I say, threat means threat of violence. You know, we have Dr. Khoza, who's an ANC MP who's taken a particular position. She claims that her life has been threatened. Well, we must find who threatened that Dr. Khoza's life and jail that person. The ideal scenario is that we always know what our representatives are doing, and we make sure that the systems are in place and the protections are in place to ensure that what our representatives are doing is what they think is in the national interest and what they think we want them to do. And you cannot have that with a secret secret ballot.
Professor Friedman, I thank you so much for your time and joining us. Yes, sir. That was Professor Friedman, political analyst here in studio with us. So, we of course, we're asking you that question. It's a very important question on the poll. Would you like to see that secret ballot, or what would you like to see, rather? That's the question. So, we'll take a look at that, but let's go over to Eben to take a look at what's trending.
Well, this is on Twitter today. Of course, there's threats of taxi strikes and a whole loads of stuff going on, but we'll start with the social media blackout. That was the one that took place online yesterday. Well, some say it didn't take place. Some say it was a failure, while others are celebrating the acknowledgements by some key network stakeholders. Also, the Bloemfontein City Hall was set alight last night. Police have arrested 3 men, we can confirm, on charges of arson. Hashtag there's Bloemfontein Hall. Of course, in some sport, unfortunately, the Proteas got a beating from England in their T20 match last night, losing by 9 wickets with more than 30 balls to spare. England versus South Africa. And then one of the top trends in the country right now is Whitney Houston. Well, the show, that is, it's currently on tour, and it stars Belinda Davids, who is a spot-on impersonator of the musical legend. She performed at Artscape in Cape Town last night and absolutely blew them away. Of course, the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, that was yesterday, known as the winter solstice. Some cities around the world even celebrate the solstice with a nude swim. Now, hashtag winter solstice, we couldn't bring you the pictures from the other side. It's very cold to be swimming in the nude. Anyhow, we have to move on as we always do. Let's just take a look at a picture of the day. This one from Justin Colbert, and it's captioned, Bloemfontein City Hall on fire last night. Thank you to all the emergency service respondents for a job well done. That's a picture of a building that's more than 100 years old, set alight by unhappy municipal workers. Let's take a look at our comment of the day. Yeah, Minister Bucks, well, he had a bit of a joke with the country last night about the social media blackout. We thought it would be quite nice. This was a tweet of the day. He said, as the Minister of Police, of course, the social media blackout was peaceful. There was no looting, no stealing of tweets, no damages on the timeline, and no mention of vandalism. Who knew our police minister had such a wonderful sense of humor? Anyhow, it's not going to be all that easy all the time, Mr. Minister, but nice tweet there. Anyhow, let's go around the courts quickly. This is what you can expect or look out for in the courts in the High Court in Mahikeng. Judgment regarding bail is expected to be granted to the 2 Kalini men who are, of course, accused of killing a teen, Matlomola Musweo, after they say he stole sunflowers. Now, this is a story that's divided South Africa, and we are sure to keep you updated right here on this channel as to how it goes down. Now, don't forget, tomorrow we'll put the spotlight on the advertising industry tomorrow, which has been accused of not transforming and constantly misrepresenting the country's racial diversity. It's something that everyone's unhappy about. Of course, the Outsurance ad on Father's Day renewed this anger at ad agencies. Stay with us tomorrow as well, because we're going to deal with that emotive issue. After the break, we'll look at the taxi industry and what is happening there. Interesting.
If we can join our hands together against the ills of our society, we can build a better nation. One youth, one South Africa.
Over 5% of the world's population, or 360 million people, has disabling hearing loss.
Sometimes babies are born that can't hear. Yeah. And especially during the pregnancy, where there's some infections that mom could pick up that can actually transmit that damage to the ear, and those children can be born deaf.
I don't look at myself as a disabled person. I looked at myself as Bruno, not with a disability. I don't have barriers. I use South African Sign Language because I have a language.
And unfortunately, we need to talk to the teenagers and the young people out there. I know it's now fine to go to the concerts and listen to that loud music, but you're actually damaging those little hair cells all the time, and you're not going to pay the price now. You're going to pay the price when you turn 45, 50, and then all of a sudden we're going to see the damage done.
For all your health news, join Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, the taxi industry has threatened a national shutdown next month if changes are not made to the existing financing model. Taxi owners claim they're being ripped off on a daily basis by vehicle finance and insurance companies and are now looking for a parallel model to help the industry overcome its financial problems. The call came after taxi owners brought major roads in Johannesburg to a standstill last Thursday, demanding better terms for taxi vehicle financing. Soon after that, Santaco and the South African Taxi Finance Holdings reached an agreement. Now, under the agreement, monthly taxi installment will be reduced by 1,800 rand. Now, we are joined in studio by the Chief Operating Officer of Taxi Choice, Thulani Kwabe, which is the business arm of Santaco, to talk about the state of the taxi industry, but also to take us through that deal. Very good morning to you, Thulani. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Good morning to you and your viewers.
Just tell us quickly about the deal that you guys struck and how it's going to play out over the next couple of weeks. Are we still going to see the national shutdown on the 12th?
Well, I think it's important for us to just clarify that the issues that the taxi industry has are quite broad. It's not just about the financing. We have problems with the pricing of the vehicles. We have a problem with the finance. We have a problem with the insurance and a lot more in the value chain, such as tires, fuel, etc. But over and above that, we also have issues that we feel government should intervene on to help us resolve, such as the big concern and issues that we have around operating licenses and the fact that the taxi industry is not subsidized. So what you saw happening last week was the taxi industry raising its voice and saying, please just listen to us. We want to be listened to. We don't want to break anything. We, in fact, want to build things. But we're looking for partners. We want partnerships. We want to partner with Corporate South Africa, and we also want to partner with government. Now, your question around the agreement with SA Taxi Finance Holdings is just one piece. So back in Durban, on the 31st of May, we listed more than 32 companies and entities that we feel can help us to resolve the problems that the taxi industry is faced with. But if you want to talk about the one company that has come forward, SA Taxi Finance Holdings, yes, indeed, there is an agreement that we've reached with them. And the agreement is about the taxi operators on the ground getting some sort of immediate relief on this burden of high installment payments. And that company, SA Taxi Finance, has come to the party.
You say it's one company, and there are many others and many other fringe companies that work with the taxi industry. In South Africa, we see a lot of price fixing. We see a lot of collusion. Do you find similar stumbling blocks when you deal with financing, with tires, with everything within the taxi industry? Are prices fixed, and are they exorbitantly high?
Well, price fixing is one issue, but are the prices high? Definitely yes. And that's what we are fighting against. So we are saying that the companies that are in the value chain can do much better for the taxi industry in terms of their pricing. They can reduce the pricing. So we believe we've got solutions to those problems, and we want to talk to companies that are prepared to change their way of thinking and change the way that they are doing business for the benefit of the thousands of taxi operators and commuters and millions of commuters in South Africa.
What are some of the other concerns that you guys have immediately? And when we look forward to the 12th, it's a date that looms large. We saw what happened last week. The people in Johannesburg were not happy as it brought the city to an absolute standstill. You're still going ahead with that national move?
We said whether we take action or not on the 12th will depend on the response that we get from the participants in the value chain, participants being Corporate South Africa as well as government. Now, we have had calls from corporates who've come forward and have said, we are raising our hand, we want to talk, how can we improve? So that's been encouraging, as well as certain parts of government or government entities have come forward and have said, let's talk. Now, we will have to assess the situation in terms of the negotiations with those who have come forward, as well as those who are still yet to come forward and talk to us in order to achieve the changes that the taxi industry desperately needs.
How do you change the perception of the taxi industry? Because we've got our viewers tweeting us. We've asked them what changes would they like, and I'll take you through some of them shortly. But I want to talk to you first about perception, because perception is very important thing. You know, the perception is that the taxi industry is a law unto itself in a way. It's underworld characters that rule the roost and hits and open gunfights at taxi ranks and these kinds of things. How are you going to get on top of that thing that is more than a perception, really?
Well, so what I definitely agree with you on is we have a lot of work to do as the taxi industry to educate South Africans about the taxi industry. There's a whole lot that people do not know and that they do not understand. So yes, indeed, we have a lot of work to do in terms of helping people understand us better, and that will then change the perception that they have about us. If we were to go into detail, then it would take us, this whole show. But some of the things, or most of the things that we are accused of, are not the way that people put them.
Yeah.
We believe that the taxi industry is very much well structured, and there's a lot of discipline in the taxi industry. If you look at the action that took place in Durban on the 31st of May, as well as the action that took place last week Thursday, there was no looting, as the minister of, said it in his tweet, Minister Mbalula. It was exactly like that, but not a tweet fight now shut down, but the protest action that we took. Absolutely peaceful, no violence reported, which we were involved in, and therefore we think the taxi industry is indeed very much well structured and disciplined.
There were some Joburg citizens, though, that were quite willing to engage in violent acts towards the taxi drivers, but that's just on a lighter note. Let's quickly look at what our viewers are sending in, and maybe you can tell me whether our viewers are out of line here. Michael, the Big M, says to us, this is what he'd like to see. Clean taxi ranks, lower fares, drivers obeying the rules of the roads, less drinking and driving. These are real concerns. Yeah, no, carry on.
So for us...
so this talks to the behavior of taxi drivers in general. Lower fares was one of those. Can we have it back just quickly, just so that Tulani can... There we go. Clean taxi ranks,
yes,
very important. Yes, lower fares, drivers obeying the rules. And, I mean, we see it every day. You see it every day, that taxis at times drive on the wrong side of the road and do things that are just unthinkable.
So for all those, that person's wish list, there's either something that we're doing about it, or there are structures to deal with those concerns. For example, drinking and driving, is totally unacceptable. If that is reported to the local taxi association, they will deal with that decisively, and that means getting rid of...
I speak to Bafana Magagula all the time, and the one thing he tells me, the first thing when I talk about behavior of taxis, he says to me, Operation Tlokomela.
Yes.
Operation Tlokomela does all of that stuff. But we don't see the behavior really changing.
Right. So let's just talk about something else, which I think is and before I answer your question, lower fares. The actions that you are seeing the taxi industry take is indeed just to achieve that. Lower fares for the millions of commuters that we have.
Yeah.
So instead of increasing our revenue by increasing our fares, we are saying let's reduce our costs.
Yeah.
And that's why you see us going to corporates and saying, let us talk business, help us reduce our costs.
Yeah.
That's why we're also talking to government about a subsidy, to say, government, help us with a subsidy so that our commuters can benefit. Operation Tlogomela, that's an ongoing initiative, and we understand that because the taxi industry is so big, we are unable to eat this elephant in one go. It's going to take a bit of time.
It's going to take a bit of time. I hear that a lot. Let's go to Pradley Koikoi, who says to you, freedom of choice. The customer must be allowed to choose what taxi operator they want to use.
Well, I think, again, it goes back to us educating South Africans. The taxi industry is so dynamic and yet so complex at the same time. We are always willing to adhere to the demands or the requests of our commuters. However, there needs to be an understanding of how our operations work on the ground.
Yeah.
And let's look at whether that's feasible or possible. And that request, I'm not sure we are able to implement that immediately.
To end off quickly, Jamila van der Scape says to us, taxi drivers must have a structured schedule of their stops. Also, their routes must be planned out. Are we ever going to see this in South Africa? Just watch this taxi stops anywhere?
Well, that's a very interesting tweet, because we believe that what makes us so popular as the taxi industry. We, by the way, transport.
You mean popular with users and not other road users?
So let's put it this way: why is 69%
popular with your clients?
Why is 69% of the commuter base using taxis? It's because we are nimble. That's one of the biggest advantages that we have.
But the nimbleness of the taxi becomes a problem for other road users. Would you agree with that?
No. Look, what I can agree with you on is there are certain instances where you get that issue. But to a large extent, for us, it's about the service that we give to the commuter.
Yeah.
And yes, there are areas where we can improve, but that will take partnership with the likes of government. But we feel that we fulfill the need of the
client.
Yes,
yes, but you are not working in a vacuum. There are other people using the roads. I'm going to have to leave it here. Very interesting talking to you, Thulani. It's nice to hear such a different kind of view on the taxi industry. Thulani Kwabe is the Chief Operating Officer of Taxi Choice, which is a business arm of Santaco here in South Africa, and we've been talking at length about, well, what you want to see change in the taxi industry, and also what is the outlook in the short term. But let's go over to Elvis, who's got a very interesting interview next.
Yes, of course, Eben, we continue with this particular discussion. It's a very important one because the taxis are at the forefront of transport in South Africa, and that is where the majority of South Africans are being transported. 15 million people per day are being transported on this particular mode of transport. It's a huge industry. Joining us now from the Northwest University is Dr. Piet Kroukamp to talk to us about the political economy of the taxis.
Good morning, Elvis.
Very good morning to you, Doctor. Talk to me about the political economy of the taxis and of the taxi industry. What is the current state? Is it still just a jungle out there where dog eat dog, or has it changed?
Look, it's a little bit more complicated. I think the most important feature of it is that in terms of black empowerment in South Africa, it is massive. I think it's the biggest feature of black economic empowerment in South African history, and it started long before apartheid ended in 1994. So it is a very dominant feature, but apart from the fact that it has around about annual revenue of 40 billion rand, it also around about stock, if you include the complete GDP of the industry, it's around about 160 billion rand. The fact is 60% of every person that goes to work every day in South Africa use a taxi. And you must remember that half of all workers in South Africa, everybody that works, earns less than 3,500 rand. So they really cater for a very, very specific market. And sometimes people accuse them of being a monopoly. You hardly can be a monopoly if you operate in a market that has a ceiling of 3,500 rand. And I think it's a very complicated industry. It's a massive industry. And I think it has a self-regulatory method that I think most users have become used to, and most South Africans have become used to. But it is a very complicated, very structured industry with a very complex relationship with the state.
Is it still classified as an informal sector, or should it be a formal sector as such?
Look, the state has been trying to regulate it for many, many years, and not very successfully. So
Why is that?
Well, much of the success of the industry relies on self-regulation. And I think that the state also, remember that the way that they negotiate their relationship, structure their relationship with the state is partially one of regulation, which means they comply with certain rules, but also they have a destructive capacity. In other words, they negotiate concessions with the state, which is always based on subsidies, money being invested from the state into the taxi industry. And the other thing is, as you've seen with the strikes, window strikes, the destructive capacity, the capacity for violence is always there as a means of negotiation. And I think that makes them such a very, very difficult competitor in the formal transport economy.
Now, recapitalization was one form from government's perspective in order to regulate the industry and to make sure that there's some control. Has that failed?
Yeah, I think nobody really got what they want, and the state is now out of money, so it's not going to happen anytime soon. But I think the efforts are still there, as Thulani has just mentioned now. The efforts are still there to get the state to take some responsibility for the fact that the taxi industry operates in a market where people are really, really at the bottom end of the socio-economic status in South Africa. And I think the state must take some form of responsibility by regulating it properly, but also remembering that the taxi industry is a cutthroat business. The profit margins are really, really, really low. And unless you in some other way support them It may just be that they become more violent. The idea of the state regulating the taxi industry is not so much to extract revenue from them, but to reduce the levels of violence in the industry.
How was the benefit of recapitalization sold to the taxi formations and owners? Because they refer to recapitalization as the poison that they can't swallow.
The thing is about the taxi industry, you know, a large number of the taxis, I think about 30 to 40% of all taxis has about 500,000 kilometers on the clock, which means that the vehicles become very old, which makes them very, very unsafe. And as Tulani has mentioned, the industry also functions in an environment, a high-risk environment, which means they battle to get funding, to get any form of
finance,
finance for vehicles. And for the industry, broader industry, we always think in terms of finance for vehicles, but there must be taxi ranks, there's infrastructure. 600,000 South Africans work in that industry. So there is the need for more regulation, for better conditions for people to work on. I think most of your viewers have complained at the conditions at taxi ranks, the lack of choice. Those things you can only really fund or improve on if the state is in a constructive way involved in an industry.
Now, the minibuses or the minibus taxis concern about finance, and we talk about that. Is that relevant and legitimate, or are they perhaps holding a gun to government's head and, of course, the finance institutions around this issue?
Look, I think that they are hard bargainers. You know, I wouldn't say they hold a gun to anybody's head, but the fact is it is a high-risk environment. The interest rates are extremely high to purchase a vehicle. If you need bank finance for it, financing is inaccessible. So it is very, very difficult to maintain the quality of the product that they need to provide the essential service with. And I think they have a point. They certainly have a case. But I also think that finance institutions, and you will know that our banks have been downgraded very recently, which means the risk of borrowing, or the cost of borrowing, has increased, which means it will be even more difficult for them to lend any money to the taxi industry or to a high-risk environment such as the taxi industry, because the first thing they will do is they will identify their high-risk clients and try to reduce their exposure to them. And the taxi industry, unfortunately, is one.
How do we transform this particular industry? Because it is perhaps the heartbeat of South Africa.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way, there's no blueprint to do this. I think the only way we can do it is the rules and regulations that has been agreed upon must be enforced strictly. We must do something about corruption, and I think there's corruption at every level of government, and the taxi industry is sometimes the victim thereof, and sometimes they exploit it. I think it's just better management of what we have, but we cannot disempower the taxi industry as it is now, because it's become part of an informal, formal economy that's too embedded. You will not coerce the taxi industry into anything. You will have to compromise with them.
I want to just go back briefly to recapitalization, because that was perhaps the silver bullet that government was looking for in formalizing the sector. But if that has not happened, what has happened to the money that was spent in the recapitalization program?
Well, I think one can now consider it subsidies. But I think, I remember and I've been involved in this thing for around about 22 years, I think one of the big obstacles to regulation was taxes, because the taxi industry pay massive taxes, levies on fuel, they pay VAT on all parts and services that they use, but they refuse to pay taxes. But the people who work there, the 600,000 people that work there, will probably don't pay taxes because they earn around about 3,500 or less. So that's not the people we talk about. We talk about the associations and the big bosses. And I think that has always been an obstacle. Once you formalize them, once you regulate them, and I think Nelson Mandela had, I was involved at the time when Nelson Mandela spoke to the taxi bosses, and they asked him, do you want us to pay taxes? And he said, yes. They said, it's not going to happen soon. And I think those things are the real problems with formalizing the industry.
Do you think, Doctor, that the taxi industry really realized their economic muscle and the change that they can bring without resorting to blockades and violence that we've seen?
Look, the state is not very responsive. And I can tell you now, quite often you don't have but a choice to use the threat of violence. They're guilty quite often of using that, but quite often they deal with a very unresponsive state. And some of the issues that they raise are there for years. When I listened to Tulani, some of those issues had been issues when I was involved in the taxi industry 20 years ago, and it's still being raised. So you used to deal with an unresponsive state, a state that perhaps is insolvent, and on the other hand, you deal in a market that has really, really very, very limited capacity to to be a resource being extracted from the commuters.
Now, we are asking our viewers today what sort of changes they would like to see in the taxi industry. What sort of changes do you think, from a broad perspective, should happen within the taxi industry to make them more accommodative to their commuters and, of course, to industry?
Well, I think practical things. I think they should really see if they can increase the choice feature for commuters. People do have a choice. Not necessarily if you want to choose a specific association, a specific taxi, it's not going to happen anytime soon. If you ask that, you don't know what's going on there because the roads and the taxi ranks are too controlled for that. But I just think make it more user-friendly. I think the taxi bosses, if they just do make a bigger effort to get the commuter on their side, because as it is now, there's a severe strain between the commuters and the taxi owners and the taxi associations. There's much they can do to improve that relationship, which will allow them then to negotiate from a point of strength with government.
Doctor, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. That was Dr. Piet Krokam from the Northwest University talking to us about the recap program. Of course, you remember that recapitalization program. But I still see those taxis on the road, Doctor, which is falling apart. None of those has been recapitalized, but the people got their money.
It's better than 10 years ago, I promise you that.
Dr. Piet Krokam here in studio with us. But right now, let's talk sports with Eben and Kendall.
Yeah, interesting one. Interesting interview, that one. Nice one to come on the back of the discussion I had with the stakeholders there. Always nice to have Prof. Pitt with us. Now, of course, we're waiting. Well, we're counting down. It's about 10 o'clock now in a couple of seconds. 20 seconds or so, it's 10 o'clock. And, well, the Constitutional Court is supposed to start there shortly. These are pictures from outside. These are pictures inside. You see there the benches are full. They're starting to count down. But of course, it's not underway yet. A full bench. As soon as they take those seats that you see there, as soon as you take them, we will be back in there. But right now, I've got Kendall Mahamati. Yeah, Kendall watched the cricket last night, and he came into work today. He was not a happy bunny. He was not a happy bunny. At all. He was not a happy bunny, and he told me he has seen better runs scored in the toilet.
You got me there. Totally stumped. But so was he.
He looked stumped even while he was batting. I have to say it's the first time. I love AB. I think AB's probably the best batsman of the modern era and one of the all-time greats here in South Africa. But I think this captaincy thing is starting to play with his head a little bit. And the team, they don't look like a happy bunch around him at the moment, unlike when they were with Faf. And we saw that again yesterday. Yeah, no, look, the Proteas have lost their way, not just a little bit, but a lot. You know, I think for the English fans that were out at the cricket oval, they must have been thinking, what a way to get rid of the IC Champion Trophies blues by playing the Proteas. Because literally, the English ran all over the Proteas with bat and with ball. And AB's captaincy, his leadership, it was lacking. There was lacking a incisive leadership on the field. At this point, right here is where I thought where leadership was needed. When he was batting with Farhan Bihardin, they were batting together. Two spinners were bowling, one a slow left-armer on a wicket that wasn't doing a lot, and the other one was a leggy on debut, a 20-year-old leg spinner on debut. They hit one boundary against the two of them in 8 overs and patted them back for singles and scored 140-odd for 3. Right there. Which, for me, was the emotional cricket intelligence just wasn't there, and it kind of talked to me, I think, where AB's mental outlook is at the moment. Yeah, look, when we heard that Faf du Plessis was coming home for the birth of his first child, it would not be available for the T20 series and maybe even the first test, you know, it put a question mark in all of our heads. It's like, how are they going to go? How are they going to perform? How are they going to come out of the disappointment of the Champions Trophy? Well, you know what? This is not the way to do it. And it's raised more questions than answers, and especially about AB de Villiers. And really, AB should really do the right thing now, and I'm saying he should resign his captaincy. Well, he's not going to. He's made it very clear after the Champions Trophy. He's not going to resign. He says he's the best man for the job. He thinks he's quite good at this job, despite a whole host of South African greats don't agree with him. Just very quickly, Eben, one of the things that I found refreshing about AB when he came in as captain is he took stuff on his shoulders. Yeah. Took it on the chin. He admitted when he'd batted badly. He admitted when he'd made a mistake with his calls. And I found that refreshing and actually honest and really great. Having said that, it's not enough. No, those days are gone. He kind of, you know, whenever you got a lion or a big cat cornered, they kind of internalize it a little bit, and that's what I'm seeing him doing. It looks like a different guy to the guy who plays with that great freedom, who really go and put teams to the sword. You know, it's not that guy anymore. It looks a different player, and I think he should come home. You know, his wife's pregnant. Take a load off and maybe come back and decide to play as a batsman only.
Yeah, he's totally uninspired, and the team as well. They're not doing what they were doing under Faf du Plessis. I'll bring that back. Faf du Plessis, there was grunt, there was brute force, there was a menace about the Proteas side, which has disappeared.
Absolutely. Let's stop the AB bashing now and let's get back to the news. I love AB. I just think that, you know, in the life of every man, there comes a time where you have to say, this is not for me. You have to let go graciously that thing that is not for you. I think it's something we all face, and I think AB is at that precipice right now. Of course, we're waiting for the Constitutional Court. It looks like Judge Mogoeng is a little bit late. Maybe there's some discussions taking place behind the scenes. None of them are on the bench as we speak. We see a lot of red berets in the front rows there, and a lot of other stakeholders, friends of the court and the like. They're all out in force today. This is what they call a big day for the Constitutional Court and for democracy in South Africa. There you see the first judge coming in. Let's just take a look at the poll. You guys are voting on this poll. Let's see before we go into the court. Do you want to see a secret ballot? Well, it's not for you to decide, but we'll take the numbers anyhow. Kendall.
Well, the votes are looking very good. 271 votes in already, and a whopping 85% are saying yes, they want to see a secret ballot. Very interesting.
Yeah, a lot of you are voting. It's not for us to decide whether we want a secret ballot. There was an interesting view from Professor Friedman earlier, who said a secret ballot would undermine democracy. That kind of blew me away. I didn't think like that. Votes would become for sale behind closed doors in the dark of night, is what he said. Very interesting view that was. Anyhow, the Constitutional Court, the judges are walking in as we speak. Let's go there live. It is a big day for democracy, they say, in South Africa.
Second respondent.
Thank you.
Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, Justices, my name is Yanela Ntloko, a pupil at the Johannesburg Bar. I appear with Ms. Delungasio on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters, the fifth respondent.
Thank you.
Chief Justice and other justices, my name is Lizelle Adams and I'm here for the eighth respondent.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chief Justice, Justices, Michael Powell on behalf of the first and the second amicus curiae.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, and other justices. My name is Maipato Shata, and I appear on behalf of the fourth amicus.
Good morning, and thank you.
Morning, Chief and Justices. My name is Cindy Balimakara from Webo Insular Attorneys. I appear on behalf of the Third Amici Institute for Security Studies. As it pleases the Court.
Good morning to you too, and thank you. This is a unanimous judgment that I have written, in which Acting Deputy Chief Justice Ngabinde, Justices Cameron, Froneman, Jafta, Kampepe, Madlanga, Mtlantla, Mujapilu, Pretorius, and Zondo concur. It is about whether the Speaker of the National Assembly has the power to prescribe a secret ballot as the voting procedure for conducting a motion of no confidence in the President. The following context is essential for a proper understanding of the reasoning and outcome. South Africa is a constitutional democracy, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people through the instrumentality of the Constitution. It is a system of governance that we, the people, consciously and purposefully opted for to create a truly free, just, and united nation. Central to this vision is the improvement of the quality of life of all citizens and the optimization of the potential of each through good governance. Since constitutions and good governance do not self-actualize, governance structures had to be created to breathe life into our collective aspirations. Hence, the existence of the legislative, executive, and judicial arms of the state. They each have specific roles to play and are enjoined to interrelate as foreshadowed by the following principle that guided our constitution-making process. I quote, "There shall be a separation of powers between the legislature, executive, and judiciary, with appropriate checks and balances to ensure accountability, responsiveness, and openness," close quote. Knowing that it is not practical for all 55 million of us to assume governance responsibilities and function effectively in these three arms of the state and its organs, we, the people, designated messengers or servants to run our constitutional errands for the common good of us all. These errands can only be run successfully by people who are unwaveringly loyal to the core constitutional values of accountability, responsiveness, and openness. And this would explain why all have to swear obedience to the Constitution before assumption of office. Unelected servants of the people serve in the judiciary, the third arm of the state that comprises judges and magistrates. Judges are selected by a constitutional body which comprises members of parliament from the ruling and opposition parties, a few judges, a cabinet member, a few legal practitioners, a university law teacher, and the president's appointees. Of the candidates who prove to be fit and proper for a judicial vacancy at the level applied for, one is then appointed by the president. And like all other accountable servants of the people, their underperformance or sanctionable conduct could result in their removal from office through an impeachment process if the judiciary, parliament, and the president so decide. The people representatives in parliament are chosen through an electoral process. Each citizen qualified to vote may participate in that process that is designed to deliver free and fair elections. Those who stand for public office and are elected must then attend the first sitting of the National Assembly. It is at that first sitting that at least three things over which the judiciary presides must happen. First, members of the National Assembly must be affirmed or sworn in. Second, the Speaker of the Assembly must be elected by members. Third, members of the Assembly must elect the President of the Republic, meaning two arms of the state, the judiciary and parliament, each has a different but critical role to play in the process of electing the head of state and head of the executive after general elections. Thereafter, the President must be sworn in by the Chief Justice, and that oath comes with serious obligations. The President is an indispensable actor in the proper governance of our Republic and bears important constitutional responsibilities. To enable him or her to discharge these obligations, he or she has a fairly free hand in assembling the service delivery team, another set of servants comprising the Deputy President and a number of ministers and deputy ministers required to exercise national executive authority of the Republic. They may be dismissed by the President. Public office in any of the three arms comes with a lot of power. That power comes with responsibilities whose magnitude determines the allocation of resources for the performance of public functions. The powers and resources assigned to each of these arms do not belong to the public office bearers who occupy positions of high authority therein. They are therefore not to be used for the advancement of personal or sectarian interests. Amandla awethu manda ndiashu matla ke ya rona o matimba ya hina Power belongs to us, and Maibuya i Africa, restore Africa and its wealth, are much more than mere excitement-generating slogans. They convey a very profound reality that state power, the land and its wealth, all belong to we the people united in our diversity. These servants of the people are supposed to exercise the power and control these enormous resources at the beck and call of the people. Since state power and resources are for our common good, checks and balances to ensure accountability enjoy preeminence in our governance system. This is all designed to ensure that the trappings or prestige of high office do not defocus or derail the repositories of people's power from their core mandate or errand. For this reason, public office bearers in all arms of the state must regularly explain how they have lived up to the promises that inhere in the offices they occupy. And the objective is to arrest or address underperformance and abuse of public power and resources. Since this matter is essentially about executive accountability, that is where the focus will be. Accountability, responsiveness, and openness enjoin the President, Deputy President, Ministers, and Deputy Ministers to report fully and regularly to Parliament on the execution of their obligations. After all, Section 42(3) of the Constitution tells us that Parliament, open quotes, is elected to represent the people and to ensure government by the people under the Constitution, close quote. It thus falls on Parliament to oversee the performance of the President and the rest of Cabinet and hold them accountable for the use of state power and the resources entrusted to them. And sight must never be lost that, open quotes, all constitutional obligations must be performed diligently and without delay, close quote. When all the regular checks and balances seem to be ineffective, or a serious accountability breach is sought to have occurred, then the citizens' best interest could at times demand a resort to the ultimate accountability ensuring mechanisms. Those measures range from being voted out of office by the electorate to removal by Parliament through a motion of no confidence or impeachment. These are crucial accountability enhancing instruments that forever remind the President and Cabinet of the worst repercussions that could be visited upon them for a perceived or actual mismanagement of the people's best interests. Whether that time has come and how exactly to employ any of these instruments is the judgment call of the same Parliament that elected the President and to which he or she accounts. Some parliamentarians believe that that time has come and have tabled a motion of no confidence in the President. They have themselves invited this court to get involved and clarify the nature and extent of Parliament's power. Rightly so, because, open quotes, everyone has the right to have a dispute that can be resolved by the application of law, decided in a fair public hearing before a court, close quote. Implicit in this application is a deep-seated concern about just how effective Parliament's constitutionally prescribed accountability enforcing mechanisms are. Do they ensure that there are enforceable consequences for failure to honor core constitutional obligations? Or is it easy to escape consequences by reason of the inefficacy of mechanisms? And does the Constitution, read with the rules of the National Assembly, give the Speaker the power to prescribe voting by secret ballot in a motion of no confidence in the President? First, a brief background. What reportedly triggered the tabling of a motion of no confidence in the President is that on 30 March 2017, invoking his constitutional powers, the President dismissed the Minister of Finance, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, and his deputy, Mr. Mcebisi Jonas. Very soon after their dismissal, our economy was downgraded to a sub-investment grade, otherwise known as junk status. And it was largely because of the economic downgrade that 3 of the political parties represented in the National Assembly, the UDM, the DA, and the EFF, asked the Speaker of the National Assembly to schedule a motion of no confidence in the President. She agreed and scheduled it for 18 April 2017. On 6 April 2017, the UDM wrote a letter to the Speaker. She was asked to prescribe a secret ballot as a voting procedure for the scheduled motion of no confidence in the President. In response, the Speaker said voting procedures in the Assembly are determined by the Constitution and the rules of the National Assembly, and that none of them provides for a vote on a motion of no confidence to be conducted by a secret ballot. She also placed reliance on the Kawama decision as a further ground for concluding that she lacks the authority to prescribe a secret ballot and for dismissing the UDM's request. Aggrieved by that response, the UDM, supported by some of the political parties represented in the National Assembly and friends of the court, approached this court to determine whether the Constitution and the rules of the National Assembly require or permit or prohibit the Speaker to direct the vote on a motion of no confidence in the President to be conducted by a secret ballot. It also seeks an order directing the Speaker to arrange that a motion of no confidence be held by a secret ballot not later than a particular date. The jurisdiction of this court is sought to be established on 2 alternative grounds: direct access and exclusive jurisdiction. We would do well, in our view, having regard to the provisions of Section 167(6) of the Constitution, to leave the resolution of the question whether this court has exclusive jurisdiction in this matter for another day. Here we embrace and reiterate the observations relating to the importance of a motion of no confidence in our constitutional democracy, its primary objective as an effective consequence enforcement tool, and the likelihood of a dispute ending up in this court, even if we were to direct that it be heard by the High Court first. A motion of no confidence in the head of state and head of the executive is a very important matter. Good governance and public interest could at times hemorrhage quite profusely if that motion were to be left lingering on for a considerable period of time. It deserves to be prioritized for attention within a reasonable time. The relative urgency of the guidance needed by Parliament from this court is also an important factor to take into account. Consistent with the approach we adopted in the Mazibuko case in relation to an application for direct appeal, we too find it convenient to resolve the jurisdictional issue on the basis of direct access. And based on the factors highlighted above, we are satisfied that it is in the interest of justice that we grant direct access to this court. On the nature and purpose of a motion of no confidence and the correct approach to be adopted in search for answers to the issues in this matter, we have the following to say. The preamble to our Constitution is characteristically terse, but profound recordal of where we come from, what aspirations we espouse, and how we seek to realize them. Our public representatives are thus required never to forget the role of this vision as both the vehicle and directional points desperately needed for the successful navigation of the way towards the fulfillment of their constitutional obligations. Context, purpose, our values, as well as the vision or spirit of transitioning from division, exclusion, and neglect to a transformed, united, and inclusive nation led by accountable and responsive constitutional office bearers must always guide us to the correct meaning of the provisions under consideration. Our entire constitutional enterprise would be best served by an approach to the provisions of our Constitution that recognizes that they are inseparably interconnected. These provisions must thus be construed purposefully and consistently with the entire Constitution. Although a motion of no confidence may be invoked in instances that are unrelated to the purpose of holding the President to account, it is a potent tool towards the achievement of that purpose. In that context, it is inextricably connected to the foundational values of accountability and responsiveness to the needs of the people. It is a mechanism at the disposal of the National Assembly to resort to whenever necessary for the enhancement of the effectiveness and efficiency of its constitutional obligation to hold the executive accountable and oversee the performance of its constitutional duties. And accountability is necessitated by the reality that constitutional office bearers occupy their positions of authority on behalf of and for the common good of all the people. It is the people who put them there, directly or indirectly, and they therefore have to account for the way they serve them. A motion of no confidence therefore exists to strengthen regular and less fatal, in quotes, accountability and oversight mechanisms. To understand how a motion of no confidence in the President and how enhances and fits into the broader accountability scheme, it is necessary to understand sections 92 and 93(2), which are of the Constitution, which are some of the constitutional accountability provisions that apply to the executive. Members of the National Executive, namely the President, Deputy President, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, are thus enjoined by the supreme law of the land to be accountable collectively and individually to Parliament for the exercise of their powers and the performance of their functions. Not only are they responsible for the proper exercise of the powers and carrying out of the functions assigned to them, but they are also required to act in line with the Constitution. Additionally, they are obliged to, in quotes, provide Parliament with full and regular reports concerning matters under their control. In anticipation of the President's and this constitutionally envisaged team's possible remissness in the execution of their constitutional mandate, provision was made to minimize or address that possibility. Those who represent the people in Parliament have thus been given the constitutional responsibility of ensuring that members of the executive honor their obligations to the people. Parliament that elects the President, and of which the Deputy President, Ministers and their deputies are members, not only passes legislation, but also bears the added and crucial constitutional responsibility, in quotes, of scrutinizing and overseeing executive action. Members of Parliament have to ensure that the will or interests of the people find expression through what the state and its organs do. This is so because Section 42(3) of the Constitution says Parliament, open quotes, is elected to represent the people and to ensure government by the people under the Constitution, close quotes. This it seeks to achieve by, among other things, passing legislation to facilitate quality service delivery to the people, appropriating budgets for discharging constitutional obligations, and holding the executive and organs of state accountable for the execution of their constitutional responsibilities. The National Assembly indeed has the obligation to hold Cabinet accountable, put effective mechanisms in place to achieve that objective, and maintain oversight of their exercise of executive authority. There are parliamentary oversight and accountability mechanisms that are sufficiently notorious to be taken judicial notice of. Some of them are calling on ministers to regularly account to portfolio committees and ad hoc committees and avail themselves to respond to parliamentary questions, as well as other question and answer sessions during a National Assembly sitting. It is also through the State of the Nation address budget speeches, and question and answer sessions that the President and the rest of the executive are held to account. These accountability and oversight mechanisms are the regular or normal ones. There may come a time when these measures are not or appear not to be effective. That would be when the President and his or her team have, in the eyes of the elected representatives of the people, to whom they are constitutionally obliged to account, disturbingly failed to fulfill their obligations. In other words, that stage would be reached where their apparent underperformance or disregard for their constitutional obligations is viewed by elected public representatives as so concerning that serious or terminal consequences are thought to be most appropriate. And that takes the form of removal from office. The Constitution provides for two processes in terms of which the President may be removed from office. First, impeachment, which applies where there is a serious violation of the Constitution or the law, serious misconduct, or an inability to perform the functions of the office. Another related terminal consequence or supreme accountability tool in between general elections is a motion of no confidence. A motion of no confidence constitutes a threat of the ultimate sanction the National Assembly can impose on the President and Cabinet should they fail or be perceived to have failed to carry out their constitutional obligations. And it is it is one of the most effective accountability or consequence enforcement tools designed to continuously remind the President and Cabinet of what could happen should regular mechanisms prove or appear to be ineffective. This measure would ordinarily be resorted to when the people's representatives have, in a manner of speaking, virtually given up on the President or Cabinet. It constitutes one of the severest political consequences imaginable, a sword that hangs over the head of the President to force him or her to always do the right thing. But that threat will remain virtually inconsequential in the absence of an effective operationalizing mechanism to give it the fatal bite whenever necessary. A motion of no confidence is, in some respects, potentially more devastating than an impeachment. It does not necessarily require any serious wrongdoing, though it is implied. It may be passed by an ordinary as opposed to a two-thirds majority of members of the National Assembly. Unlike an impeachment that targets only the President, a motion of no confidence does not spare the Deputy President, ministers, and deputy ministers of adverse consequences. And the Constitution does not say when and on what grounds it would be fitting to seek refuge in a motion of no confidence. As to when and why a point could be, I beg your pardon, I'll start again. As to when and why a point could conceivably be reached where serious fault lines in the area of accountability, good governance, and objective suitability for the highest office have since become apparent, those concerns might not necessarily rise to the level of grounds required for impeachment. But the lingering expectation of the President delivering on the constitutional mandate entrusted to him or her might have become increasingly dim. In the final analysis, the mechanism of a motion of no confidence is all about ensuring that our constitutional project is well managed, is not imperiled, the best interest of the nation enjoy priority in whatever important step is taken, and our nation is governed only by those deserving of governance responsibilities. To determine through a motion of no confidence the continued suitability for office of those who govern is a crucial consequence management or good governance issue. This is so because the needs of the people must never be allowed to be neglected without appropriate and most effective consequences. So, a motion of no confidence is fundamentally about guaranteeing or reinforcing the effectiveness of existing mechanisms in between the general elections by allowing members of parliament as representatives of the people to express and act firmly on their dissatisfaction with the executive's performance. But does the Speaker have the power to prescribe a secret ballot as the voting procedure in a motion of no confidence in the President? Put differently, do the Constitution and the rules of the National Assembly require, permit, or prohibit that voting in a motion of no confidence in the President be by secret ballot? Section 102.2 provides that the National Assembly has the power to pass a motion of no confidence by a vote. No section or rule supports the contention that a secret ballot is required or provides expressly for any voting procedure in a motion of no confidence. But several important observations emerge from sections of the Constitution that provides for voting. The procedure to be followed for the election of the President and several constitutional office bearers, even at a provincial level, has been specifically provided for. It is voting by secret ballot, and whoever secures a majority of votes is to be declared elected. As regards the removal from office either through an impeachment or a motion of no confidence, the Constitution is silent on the procedure. The Constitution could have provided for a vote by secret ballot or an open ballot. It did neither. Why did the Constitution not prescribe the voting procedure in a motion of no confidence? Absent an express constitutional choice, the National Assembly is at large to exercise its Section 57(1) powers to decide on the appropriate procedure in terms of which to vote on the motion. And the choice lies between an open ballot or a secret ballot. The National Assembly, therefore, has the power to determine whether voting on a motion of no confidence would be by open ballot or secret ballot, informed by what would best advance our constitutional vision or project. Both possibilities of an open or secret ballot are constitutionally permissible. Otherwise, if members always had to vote openly and in obedience to enforceable party instructions, provision would not have been made for a secret ballot when the President, Speaker, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces and their deputies are elected. And the Constitution would not, I beg your pardon, and the Constitution would have made it clear that voting would always be by open ballot. If the will of political parties were always to prevail, the Constitution would probably have required of political parties to determine which way they want to vote on issues, and through their chief whips signify support or opposition by submitting the list of members who would be present when the voting takes place. But because it is individual members who really have to vote, provisions are couched in the language that recognizes the possibility of majorities supporting the removal of the President and the Speaker. Conceptually, those majorities could only be possible if members of the ruling party, of a ruling party, are also at liberty to vote in a way that does not always have to be predetermined by their parties. And this, of course, assumes that the ruling party would generally be disinclined to the removal of their own. It bears emphasis that the absence of a prior determination of the voting procedure by the Constitution for a motion of no confidence means that it neither prohibits nor prescribes an open ballot or secret ballot. The effect of this is to leave it open to the National Assembly when the time comes to vote on that motion, to decide on the appropriate voting procedure. This can only reinforce the conclusion that the Assembly has the power to make that determination. It is for it to decide on the voting procedure necessary for the efficiency and effectiveness of the institution in holding the executive accountable. In sum, how best and in terms of which voting procedure to hold the President accountable in a particular instance is the responsibility constitutionally allocated to the National Assembly. The Assembly has made rules in terms of its Section 57 powers. Those rules make provision for the determination of the voting procedure for a motion of no confidence. Though, I beg your pardon, through its rules, it has in effect empowered the Speaker to decide how a particular motion of no confidence in the President is to be conducted. Rule 104, 1 and 3 of the National Assembly empowers the Speaker to have a motion of no confidence in the President voted on by secret ballot. But as to when a secret ballot would be appropriate is an eventuality that has not been expressly provided for and which then falls on the Speaker to determine. It is her judgment call to make, having due regard to what would be the best procedure to ensure that members exercise their oversight powers most effectively. And this is the approach that is demanded by and accords with separation of powers. Next to be addressed are factors that ought to exercise the mind of the Speaker in determining the appropriate voting procedure. The proper exercise of the power to prescribe a voting procedure in a motion of no confidence proceedings would partly depend on why the Constitution prescribes a secret ballot for the general elections and a contested election of the President and the Speaker. As is the case with general elections where a secret ballot is deemed necessary to enhance the freeness and fairness of the elections, so it is with the election of the President by the National Assembly. This allows members to exercise their vote freely and effectively in accordance with the conscience of each without undue influence, intimidation, or fear of disapproval by others. The frustration or disappointment of the losing presidential hopeful and his or her supporters could conceivably have a wide range of prejudicial consequences for members who are known to have contributed to the loss. To allow members of the National Assembly to vote with their conscience and choose who they truly believe to be the best presidential material for our country without any fear for reprisals, a secret ballot has been identified as the best voting mechanism. Conversely, a member of Parliament could be exposed to a range of reasonably foreseeable prejudicial consequences when called upon to pronounce through a vote on the President's accountability or continued suitability for the highest office. But of course, that potential risk would also depend on the motivation for the motion of no confidence. Is it on grounds that impugn competence, faithfulness to the Republic, or commitment to upholding constitutional obligations, or on some fairly innocuous or less divisive or less sensitive grounds? The appropriateness of a voting procedure for that motion is particularly important since our electoral system is structured in such a way that it is, broadly speaking, a party but not a member of Parliament that actually gets voted into Parliament. A political party virtually determines who goes to Parliament and who is no longer allowed to represent it in Parliament. Members' fate or future in office depends largely on the party. The Deputy President, ministers and deputy ministers are also members of Parliament. Who are also members of Parliament are presidential appointees. The ruling party has a great influence on or dictates who gets appointed or elected as senior office bearers in Parliament. Almost invariably, the President, although not a member of Parliament, is the leader of the ruling party. It would be quite surprising if the senior office bearers in Parliament are not appointed or elected with a significant input by the President and other senior party officials. There are, therefore, institutional and other risks that members, particularly of any ruling party, are likely to get exposed to when they openly question or challenge the suitability of their leader or leaders for the position of president. I say leaders advisedly because the logical trend has been to give the highest positions in governance structures to most senior leaders. Addressing this occasional tension between party loyalty and the need to vote according to conscience in the certification case, this court made observations set out in broad terms below. The most effective extra-parliamentary mechanism for holding the people's elected representatives accountable is a general election. It is in this context that this court said that, open quotes, it is parties that the electorate vote for and parties which must be accountable to the electorate, close quote. Also, that a party's unacceptable abandonment of its manifesto is likely to result in electoral defeat, and that a factor that is relevant to the speaker's decision-making in relation to a democratically permissible voting procedure is that, open quotes, an individual member remains free to follow the dictates of personal conscience, close quote. Central to the freedom to follow the dictates of personal conscience is the oath of office. Members are required to swear or affirm faithfulness to the Republic and obedience to the Constitution and laws. Nowhere does the Supreme Law provide for them to swear allegiance to their political parties, important players though they are in our constitutional scheme. Meaning, in the event of conflict between upholding constitutional values and party loyalty, their irrevocable undertaking to in effect serve the people and do only what is in their best interest must prevail. This is so to enable the people to govern through them in terms of the Constitution. Also, that a party's unacceptable abandonment of its manifesto is likely to result in electoral defeat, a factor that is relevant to the Speaker's decision-making in relation to a democratically permissible voting procedure. There's a repetition for which I apologize. When the risk that inheres in voting in defiance of the instructions of one's party is evaluated, it must be counterbalanced with the apparent difficulty of being removed from the assembly. Openness is one of our foundational values, and the assembly's internal arrangements, proceedings, and procedures are required by the Constitution to have due regard to the need to uphold the value of transparency in carrying out the business of the assembly. The electorate is at times entitled to know how their representatives carry out even some of the most sensitive obligations, such as passing a motion of no confidence. They are not supposed to always operate under the cover of secrecy. Considerations of transparency and openness sometimes demand a display of courage and the resoluteness to boldly advance the best interest of those they represent, no matter the consequences, including the risk of dismissal for non-compliance with a party's instructions. These factors must also be reflected upon by the Speaker when considering whether voting is to be by secret or open ballot. Some consequences are adverse or injurious, not so much to individuals as they are to our constitutional democracy. Crass dishonesty in the form of bribe-taking or other illegitimate methods of gaining undeserved majorities must not be discounted from the Speaker's decision-making process. Anybody, including members of Parliament or of the judiciary anywhere in the world could potentially be bought, in quotes. When that happens, in a motion of no confidence, the outcome could betray the people's best interest. This possibility must not be lightly or naively taken out of the equation as a necessarily far removed and negligible possibility when the stakes are too high. For when money or oiled hands determine the voting outcome, particularly in a matter of such monumental importance, then no conscience or oath finds expression. The correct exercise of Parliament's powers in relation to a motion of no confidence in the President must therefore have the effect of ensuring that the voting process is not a fear or money-inspired sham, but a genuine motion for the effective enforcement of accountability. When that is so, the distant but real possibility of being removed from office for good reason would serve the original and essential purpose of encouraging public office bearers to be accountable and fulfill their constitutional obligations. Each member must, depending on the grounds and the circumstances of the motion, be able to do what would in reality advance our constitutional project of improving the lives of all citizens, freeing their potential and generally ensuring accountability for the way things are done in their name and purportedly for their benefit. So the centrality of accountability, good governance, and the effectiveness of mechanisms created to effectuate this objective must enjoy proper recognition in the determination of the appropriate voting procedure for a particular motion of no confidence in the President. That voting procedure is situation-specific. Some motions of no confidence might require a secret ballot, but others not, depending on a conspectus of circumstances that ought reasonably and legitimately to dictate the appropriate procedure to follow in a particular situation. The power to decide whether a motion of no confidence is to be resolved through an open or secret ballot cannot be used illegitimately or in a manner that has no regard to the surrounding circumstances that ought to inform its exercise. It is neither for the benefit of the Speaker nor his or her party. This power must be exercised to achieve the purpose of a motion of no confidence, which is primarily about guaranteeing the effectiveness of regular mechanisms. The purpose of that motion is also to enhance the enforcement of accountability by allowing members of Parliament, as representatives of the people, to express and act firmly on their dissatisfaction about the executive performance in between general elections. It is fundamentally for the advancement of good governance through quality service delivery, accountability, the strengthening of our democracy, and the realization of the aspirations of the people of South Africa. The exercise of the power to determine the voting procedure must thus always be geared at achieving the purpose for which that power exists. The procedure in terms of which the voting right is allowed to be exercised must brighten and enhance the prospect of the purpose for which it was given being better served or advanced. More importantly, the power that vests in the Speaker to determine the voting procedure in a motion of no confidence belongs to the people and must thus not be exercised arbitrarily or whimsically. Nor is it open-ended and unguided. It is exercisable subject to constraints, the primary constraint being that it must be used for the purpose it was given to the Speaker, the facilitation of the effectiveness of Parliament's accountability mechanisms. Other constraints include the need to allow members to honor their constitutional obligations, regard being had to their sworn faithfulness to the Republic, and irrevocable commitment to do what the Constitution and the laws require of them for the common good of all South Africans. The Speaker is chosen from amongst members of the National Assembly. That gives rise to the same responsibility to balance party interest with those of the people. It is as difficult and onerous a dual responsibility as it is for members, perhaps even more so, given the independence and impartiality the position requires. But Parliament's efficacy in its constitutional oversight of the executive vitally depends on the Speaker's proper exercise of this enormous responsibility. The Speaker must thus ensure that his or her decision strengthens that particular tenet of our democracy and does not undermine it. There must always be a proper and rational basis for whatever choice the Speaker makes in the exercise of the constitutional power to determine the voting procedure. Due regard must always be had to the real possibilities of corruption, as well as the prevailing circumstances and whether they allow members to exercise their vote in a manner that does not expose them to illegitimate hardships. Whether the prevailing atmosphere is generally peaceful or toxified and highly charged is one of the important aspects of that decision-making process. In conclusion, when approached by the UDM to have the motion of no confidence in the President voted on by secret ballot, the Speaker said that neither the Constitution nor the rules of the National Assembly allow her to authorize a vote by secret ballot. To this extent, she was mistaken. Our interpretation of the relevant provisions of the Constitution and the rules make it clear that the Speaker does have the power to authorize a vote by a secret ballot in a motion of no confidence proceedings against the President in appropriate circumstances. The exercise of that power must be duly guided by the need to enable effective accountability, which is in the best interest of the people and obedience to the Constitution. To the extent that the Tlowama decision might have been understood to have held that a secret ballot procedure is not at all constitutionally permissible, that understanding is incorrect. The Speaker's decision was invalid and must be set aside. Turning to remedy, this Court has been asked to direct the Speaker, open quotes, to make all the necessary arrangements to ensure that a motion of no confidence is decided by secret ballot, including designating a new date for the motion to be debated, close quote. But no legal basis exists for that radical and separation of powers insensitive move. The Speaker has made it abundantly clear that she is not averse to a motion of no confidence in the President being decided upon by a secret ballot. She only lamented the perceived constitutional and regulatory reality that she lacked the power to authorize voting by secret ballot. Meaning, now that it has been explained that she has the power to do that which she is not averse to, she has the properly guided latitude to prescribe what she considers to be appropriate voting procedure in the circumstances. It may be necessary to add that her counsel reiterated during the hearing that the Speaker is not really opposed to a secret ballot. The President's counsel also said that the Constitution neither requires nor prohibits, but in reality permits a secret ballot. He went on to say a secret ballot does not necessarily hold adverse consequences for the President. It would thus be inappropriate to order the Speaker to have the motion of no confidence in the President conducted by secret ballot, as if she ever said that she would not do so, even if she had the power to do so, and even if circumstances plainly cry out for it. To order a secret ballot would trench separation of powers. Whether the proceedings are to be by secret ballot is a power that rests firmly in the hands of the Speaker, but exercisable, subject to crucial factors that are appropriately seasoned with considerations of rationality. This Court cannot assume that she will not act in line with the legal position and conditionalities as now clarified by this Court. No legal or proper basis exists for that. In the result, we make the following order. 1, The United Democratic Movement is granted direct access. 2, it is declared that the Speaker of the National Assembly has the constitutional power to prescribe that voting in a motion of no confidence in the President of the Republic of South Africa be conducted by secret ballot. 3, the Speaker's decision of 6 April 2017 that she does not have the power to prescribe that voting in a motion of no confidence in the President be conducted by secret ballot is set aside. 4, the United Democratic Movement's request for a motion of no confidence in the President to be decided by secret ballot is remitted to the Speaker for her to make a fresh decision. 5, the Speaker and the President must pay the costs of the United Democratic Movement, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the Inkatha Freedom Party, and the Congress of the People, including costs of 2 council where applicable. I hand down this judgment. The court will adjourn.
Sensational developments there in the Constitutional Court. Despite all the pronouncements by the likes of Friedman this morning saying that this will never happen, well, dismissed with costs. The UDM's application successful in the Constitutional Court. If we look at the pictures coming in from the at the Constitutional Court right now, you can see that there was a cheers and a buoyant mood as the judgment was finalized by Justice Mogoeng here at the Constitutional Precinct. We'll be speaking to our reporter Aldrin Sampier shortly. He's busy setting up outside the courthouse there. But let's take a quick break, get our ducks in a row. We'll be back with you in a minute or so.
Cloud systems and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join me, Spumelele Zondi, on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
Are you about that trending life? The looking good and all that stage? Well, fear not, because Trends has all the fashion do's and don'ts for you to stay on point this upcoming season.
This film will be an immersive spectacle. You got Kong that's 100 feet tall.
It tells this incredible story of man versus nature.
The iconic stage production by Mbongeni Ngema is back with a bang.
Sarafina is a classic South African production.
I always choose to align myself with brands that I just love. Because when you love something, it doesn't become work.
Luxury is not built overnight, but it's an experience that comes with time.
Catch up with all the trends on Trends Saturdays at 12.
Let's go live. It's happening.
The UDM feels vindicated because we asked the Speaker to use her prerogative, but she put the interest of her political party ahead of Parliament. This judgment also means that the threats which have been issued by Zuma and others, where they threaten the ANC MPs, falls flat now. Those MPs are free to vote and follow their conscience. So, lastly, I wish to say that the United Democratic Movement, as well as the opposition parties, we are going to continue to seize the initiative. Up until 2019, we have been in charge of seizing this initiative from the day Zuma was elected. We are still saying you cannot have a questionable character and vote that questionable character to the high office. And I hope this is a lesson for all South Africans to see. Otherwise, thank you to my colleagues. I will hand over to EFF and COPE and DA. Where's the spokesperson?
Well, my dear friends, this is the triumph of democracy. Ours is a new democracy. The constitutional clauses that the Constitutional Court dealt with today have not been interpreted before. In interpreting them, the court has made it clear that those of us who are elected, once elected, and having taken our oath of office, owe it to the people of South Africa as a whole that no political party can compel a member of parliament to vote against their conscience and against their judgment. This is very important because in the previous election, for instance, of President Zuma, some 69 members of the National Assembly did not vote either for candidates of the opposition or the candidate of the ruling party. It does say that they were not free. Now they will be free to exercise those 69 votes without fear of repercussions. And the threats that were being issued against members of the caucuses, especially the caucus of the ruling party, those fears are no longer having a place in our democracy. And I congratulate as well all of those of us in opposition benches who did not lack the courage to stand our ground and to insist that our constitution must be followed in letter and spirit. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what we must note specifically is that it's the opposition parties that have created an environment for the ruling party, the governing party, to be able to make right decisions on behalf of the people of South Africa. These are the people who have voted for them, and they have failed to represent the people in Parliament. We had to use our time, our resources to come to the Constitutional Court, to ask the Constitutional Court to be able to create an environment for them to do the right thing in this country. So as opposition parties, we stand here on the right side of history. And on the day when we declare when the Speaker declares the day for the the motion of no confidence, you can be assured that the opposition parties are going to stand together. We are going to shut down South Africa. And we are giving South African voters the opportunity to be part of this. You complain on social media, this is your opportunity to shut down the country, and you must tell your MPs, your ANC MPs, who they must vote for and that they must stand on the right side of history. Thank you.
Zuma must fall.
Yes, he must.
Zuma must fall.
Hold on. The Democratic Alliance is delighted by the court judgment. We believe that this was a victory not only of the opposition parties but for the people of South Africa, who now, through their elected representatives, have the opportunity to remove a toxic president who is destroying our country. We brought the motion of no confidence. We wish to now write to the Speaker and have that motion scheduled as soon as possible, and we will ensure that when the Speaker makes the decision that she has to now make as to whether or not it should be an open ballot or a secret ballot, that decision is a rational decision that supports the Constitution, that supports freedom, that supports fairness, and supports the people of South Africa. And I'd like also to congratulate all the other opposition parties who, standing together, have made history today.
General, just
IFP
first.
Yes, I mean, as the IFP, we are very delighted about the decision. In fact, when you study the decision, I mean, you listen to the judgment carefully. It was just reminding the Speaker that she was supposed to do a job which she was afraid to do. Therefore, democracy prevailed today, and as IFP, we are delightful, and we congratulate all the parties that joined together. Because remember that the IFP also started very long ago for the Speaker to apply this rule, where she's got a right to determine that voting the president should, I mean, the vote of no confidence should be about a secret ballot. Therefore, as the IFP, we're delighted, and we can't wait for that day where the motion of no confidence is debated in the National Assembly, and the IFP is ready to make sure that we save our party from our country, from the rot that the current head of state is putting us into.
ACDP, last bite.
From the ACDP,
the multi-party guys.
From the ACDP, we are very delighted about the outcome. We have been expecting this, and it is long overdue. And we hope that South Africans will know today that democracy prevails. All the parties stood together to stand for democracy, even in Parliament. The Speaker is now going to have to do the right thing, which initially she said she doesn't have the right. The Concord proved that she has got the right to make that determination, that during the motion of no confidence, she can decide that it can be done through a secret ballot, and we are very delighted about that. We are very sure that even those from the ANC who wanted to do the right thing are now going to have an opportunity to do so. And we say thank you to all the members of the coalition, members of the other parties, to have gone through this process. It has brought up democracy in its very operational way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all right. General, just a quick question. Whichever the outcome of this court ruling now, you guys still need the support of ANC MPs for whatever motion to be successful.
Yes.
What's your message to ANC MPs at this moment?
The message to the ANC MPs is that they should now begin to read this watershed judgment, which said, put the people first. So if ANC vote against or they don't support the motion to remove Zuma, the voters in 2019 must do a good job. That is, punish the African National Congress.
Sir, can I just ask one question? How confident are you that the Speaker will make the right decision? Sure, the rules are clarified, but the Concord says the decision still lies with her.
Well, I'll leave it that to Kwankwa. Where's Kwankwa? So you don't have to worry about the Speaker now. We've got a moral victory here. So we'll deal with that.
No, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the question?
I beg your pardon. We will obviously, I was working as the General was calling me, trying to say that we need to initiate a process of resubmitting the request to the Speaker for that motion of no confidence, because you remember that we had to withdraw it pending the outcome of this constitutional court process. Now that this matter is finalized, we need to resubmit it and make sure that it's done, and then we get a date that is scheduled by the Speaker to debate it as soon as possible.
Are you confident that the Speaker would abide by the call that it be done in secret?
We have a collective responsibility to make sure that the Speaker abides by it.
No, but what we must keep in mind, the court did not say she must do that.
Yes.
The court has said she has the power, and she now must know that she's free to use her discretion. By the way, she already said to the court before that she was not averse to it. So we must not cast doubt where there is no doubt. So we can't decide.
So you can't speak on confidence yet. Is that it? But that's what he's asking. He's asking about confidence in her execution.
That is why we're saying.
Well, there you have it. Secret ballot will go ahead if the Speaker of Parliament so chooses. So, the entire focus will now move towards Parliament and the Speaker in the shape of Balekambete. Elvis is standing by actually to take us to Parliament right now for more reaction.
Yes, thank you, Eben. Of course, that ruling, we heard earlier from Professor Friedman that it would be probably undemocratic. So, we have political parties now standing by in Parliament to give us their take on the Constitutional Court. We are joined in the studio by Mr. Naran Singh. He's the IFP Chief Whip. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome. Mr. Singh, can you hear me? Mr. Singh, are you there? Mr. Singh?
Good morning. Sorry about that.
Good morning to you, sir. First and foremostly, your reaction to the ruling this morning. Are you shocked or are you relieved?
No, we are relieved. We were optimistic yesterday when we were asked to provide a comment. And I think people's power has been restored by this landmark judgment by the Apex Court. The debate now shifts to another arena, which is the arena that I am seated in Parliament, where we are now going to bring pressure to bear upon the Speaker to ensure that she has a secret ballot. And I think the court, in its unanimous judgment, have clearly enunciated the guidelines under which that decision should be made. And the guidelines certainly work in favour of a secret ballot being instituted here in Parliament when the vote takes place.
What does it mean for opposition parties, you think?
Well, for opposition parties, certainly we are vindicated. There have been many rulings against what has happened in Parliament. It's unfortunate that we have to always resort to the courts, much to the chagrin of the ruling party. But, our democracy rightfully provides us that opportunity. And, for us, it's a victory. It's a victory for the people of South Africa because they do not have to wait once in 5 years to express themselves, because lots can happen in between. And we know with the incidences like the state capture report, the thousands of emails that have revealed corruption, tender irregularities, even members of the executive being captured, this provides an ideal opportunity for the people of South Africa, through the elected representatives, which is us as members of Parliament, to decide whether the head of government and the government that's in place should be the one to lead us through to the next election.
This is the first hurdle, a very important hurdle, but there's a second hurdle, a very important one in Parliament. You have to face the Speaker, Balekambete, on this issue.
Yes, obviously now the pressure falls back on her. It's unfortunate that she was advised in the manner that she was, but it goes back to her now, and she was not opposed, as you heard Chief Justice saying, and in our papers that the IFP put forward. Prince Buthelezi has been calling for a secret ballot, which is consistent with the way you elect a president, for many years now, and that in itself says to us, well, it's a victory well worth waiting for, and it's a victory for people of this country.
This morning we had an analyst here in studio, Professor Friedman, and he suggested that if a secret ballot is granted, it might lead to corruption, underhandedness, and a lot of other things that people won't know. It won't be open and transparent. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think the Chief Justice did make reference to that, but we hope that all members of Parliament would certainly now vote with their consciences, because at the end of the day, we are accountable outside to the people, and we really need to vote with our conscience. And although people will not know how individual members have voted, I think if the opposition parties can get 50 more votes than we can accumulate for ourselves, it'll be great for democracy, and it will show to the ruling party and to the leader of government that things are not right in this country, and people out there, including members of your own party, are sensing that you are not the right person to take this country forward.
So what is the next step now, Mr. Singh, and when will we have then a final outcome from the Speaker on this matter?
Well, I think what we will have to do now, those of us that are here in Parliament, and I want to congratulate all my leaders that are out there, the Concord. Unfortunately, we could not be there. Those of us that are here will try and get together in the next hour or so to plan our next line of approach to this matter. And we take it from there. But hopefully a motion of no confidence could be placed before the House. And, you know, as one of our other leaders had said, you know, whether we win it or we lose it, but I think it's a moral victory for democracy in our country.
Well, thank you so much for your time and joining us. That was Mr. Naran Singh. He's the IFP Chief Whip and an MP. And, of course, we would like to know, of course, from you, what is your reaction to this? You can let us know on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But, Eben, this morning, we asked that poll in relation to what was going to happen in the Constitutional Court today. What are the people saying?
Social media is going crazy, not just on the poll. Of course, we've been running those polls since this morning. And this is still the question. And this is the question that's now going to be... This is the question that's very relevant, and it's going to be put to the Speaker, Balekambete. And Balekambete, I think the entire narrow focus of an entire nation will now shift to the office of the Speaker. And if she looked at the numbers of us, if she looked at the numbers, and we've got 335 votes in, of course, earlier the Prof said, oh, there's 50 million people in South Africa, but all polls are just a guide as to how the nation is thinking, a sample, and the overwhelming majority, 84% of 335 votes are saying, yes, we want to see the secret ballots.
And there you have it. You ask for it.
Of course, there are fears of intimidation, fears of violence, fears of attacks on MPs who don't tell the party line. All these things are right in the conversation. Here are some tweets to what our viewers are talking about now. McDonald Maliwa raises this point. Says, yes, so that the members of the ruling party can be free to decide with their secret ballot votes. Of course, there's a lot of mistrust in this whole scenario. This one from Chief Mokele, who says, Professor Friedman is rational. No to the secret ballot. The concerning thing, I think, Elvis, for most people is, let's just read what Pravin Catastrophe says. He says, even if the judgment is in favor of a secret ballot, will the ANC MPs really fall into that mantra? They won't, I guess. Loyalty, he says. Of course, the UDM spoke a little bit earlier about the kinds of discussions they've had with ordinary MPs, not members of the executive, Elvis. Ordinary MPs, they say there's an appetite amongst ordinary MPs to vote secretly because they feel this kind of thing. The professor's view, of course, has been a very rational and strong one. It makes sense. The worrying thing is precedent.
And this will definitely set a precedent.
Are we going to see this kind of precedent being taken forward to other votes in Parliament? And how will that affect the democratic processes that we hold?
Will we see a number of brown envelopes being exchanged in the middle of the night? Well, in dark, smoky rooms, perhaps?
That's what the worry is, and that's a concern. And it's not just a concern amongst social media people. It's very much a concern amongst some of the academics, including Professor Friedman, who says these kinds of things undermine the democratic process. Because what if you're voting on something else tomorrow that is in the interest of the public?
But it's also at the discretion, of course, of the Speaker at every time when this will come to.
That's what I'm saying. There's very narrow focus now comes on to Balekambete. I think her seat has suddenly become the hottest one in the country. Of course, there are many people on social media already talking about, well, they don't think that she would go against the grain and that they don't believe that this ballot will be in secret. But there's more reaction in Parliament. Let's have a listen what some of the other parties are having to say.
Steve Swart is standing by from the ACDP. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
To your viewers.
We had some reaction from other political parties. Your thoughts on the ruling this morning?
Yes, well, from our side, and as a lawyer, we obviously welcome the ruling and we commend all the party leaders that are there and the efforts that they've taken in taking this matter to court. What is significant is that the Constitutional Court has basically overturned the Western Cape High Court, which found that the Speaker did not have the discretion. So that is a very key aspect as a lawyer that we need to understand. And also, I heard your discussion earlier with Eben, Elvis, where you indicated there was a concern about secret ballots be in the order of the day. I think the court has laid down very strict guidelines as to when it should be. It should be a matter of great import. And any decision by the Speaker, either way, whether it is an open or a closed ballot, must be legitimate and can itself be taken on review. So there's a huge onus on the Speaker, and we from Parliament, sitting from Parliament, and obviously myself, a long-serving member on the Justice Committee, will be watching very closely as to how this discretion is exercised. It is clear, and I join my colleagues on this particular instance of the vote of no confidence, that it requires a motion of no confidence, because in the corridors of power, walking around here, there are a number of MPs that have spoken to us as opposition parties and said they would like to support a motion of no confidence, but they are concerned about the repercussions and the reprisals. And therefore, this is a major step forward to protect them from reprisals. And as the court indicated, where you have such high levels of unhappiness in society, this is not a normal no confidence debate. This is of a high level where your president and the levels of state capture that have been indicated, and that there's prima facie evidence is of such a nature that your majority party MPs themselves in Parliament are very concerned about this. And so there's a good chance that many of them will support this motion if it is done as a secret ballot. And we obviously from the ACDP will be working with other opposition parties to persuade the Speaker that in the light of what the court has found and the guidelines that the court has given, that this is a matter that should be and requires it to be a secret ballot. But it doesn't mean that every vote in Parliament will be by a secret ballot.
There were rumours of intimidation for those MPs that do not toe the party line from the ANC. Will this particular ruling now protect them, you think?
Well, it will absolutely, because if at the end of the day that the voting does take place by a secret ballot, then accountability will be ensured, and of course secrecy. No one will be able to determine which members of Parliament voted for in support of the motion of no confidence. So they will be protected from reprisals, and that was the motivation for bringing this court application, because one picked up here in Parliament that there were many MPs that are unhappy with the situation, but they were saying that because of the Western Cape High Court's previous decision, and because the Speaker said she does not have the power to determine a secret ballot, and that the court has now said is incorrect. She's incorrect in that assumption, and they have now said you do have the power, but it is your discretion, and you need to exercise it in a very careful, and it's an onerous burden, but how you exercise it, they've given those guidelines. So yes, they will. Those members of Parliament from the majority party that do choose to support the motion of no confidence will be protected from any reprisals, because there'll be no indication of how they voted. Similar to when we vote for the President, the Deputy President and the Speaker at the beginning of a new parliamentary timetable. It's a secret ballot. There's no indication of how people have voted.
If the Speaker grants you're asking for a vote of no confidence and with a secret ballot, what does the number suggest, though, Mr. Swart? Do you think that you will get it?
Well, it's about a shortage of between 50 and 60 members of Parliament from the majority party that we would be required to support this motion of no confidence. And there's been a lot of discussion. Remember, there's a very sense of collegiality here in Parliament. There are a number, and you've probably noticed in the last while how members of Parliament are exercising their muscles, their oversight muscles. And it's a question of accountability. It's a question of your oath of office, in your oath of allegiance to the Constitution, and not only to your political party. That former President Thabo Mbeki emphasized. So I do believe, from what one speaks and one hears in the corridors, that those numbers we will be able to persuade 50 to 60 members of Parliament of the ruling party to support a motion of no confidence, and there's a good likelihood that it may succeed. People are also looking, the majority party members are also looking to 2019, and opinion polls are showing that the majority party might not win the 2019 elections. So there are a number of aspects here, but the most important aspect is our constitutional duty of accountability and to the elected, as elected representatives to the citizens of the country, and not only to your political party. And I think that's what the Constitutional Court highlighted this morning.
Mr. Swart, I thank you so much for your time and joining us.
Thank you.
That was the ACDP Steve Swart talking to us there. Now, Eben, It sounds like this is going to have ample legs on this story.
They say the truth is always stranger than fiction, Elvis, and it's happening right in front of us. Let's go back to the Constitutional Court. Aldrin is there. Aldrin, can you hear me? If you're with me, just tell us what's the mood there like before you do your interview, mate.
Well, certainly we just heard from the opposition parties. They're welcoming this decision by the court and saying that they had believed quite certainly, even before they came to this court, that the Speaker does have discretionary power. And the UDM's Bantu Lumisa saying the reason why they came to the court is after they made the application to the Speaker of Parliament that the motion of no confidence, which was tabled by the DA, be conducted, that the ballot, rather, the vote be conducted via a secret ballot. And she said that she doesn't have the discretionary powers to do that. She said that the rules of Parliament doesn't allow her to do that, and saying that the Constitution as well doesn't give a provision for a secret ballot on a motion of no confidence against the President. That decision, the Constitutional Court says, is invalid, and that has now been set aside. Quite interesting, though, is Justice Mogoeng speaking about the Speaker of Parliament, saying that she's not averse. She wasn't averse from the onset to have a secret ballot in the motion of no confidence against the President. And the UDM, the UDM, the DA, the EFF, all emphasizing on that point, as well as COPE emphasizing on this point that she said she's not averse to that vote of the motion of no confidence, rather, being conducted through a secret ballot. And just looking at this case, it's yet another case that has been lost by the Speaker of Parliament. It's yet another case as well where even the President has lost at this court. And Chief Justice Mogoeng speaking as well about the relevance and the importance and the effectiveness of a motion of no confidence, saying that it's probably the most effective compared to the three other mechanisms that are available to hold the executive accountable. One of those mechanisms being the general elections, but between the general elections there is this motion of no confidence that is available to MPs should they believe that the person that has been elected to the highest office in the land is not carrying out the services to South Africans and not upholding the Constitution as well. And then, of course, there is the other one, which is an impeachment. But, of course, the dire consequences for a motion of no confidence, as we have been emphasizing, and Justice Mogoeng saying, using the analogy, saying it's almost like a sword hanging over the President's head, a motion of no confidence, considering that when you have this motion of no confidence, if it is successful, that you will have the President has to resign, the Deputy President have to resign, the ministers have to resign, as well as the Deputy Ministers.
Aldrin, the focus now shifts to Baleka Mbete. What is the word on the street with regards to the likely decisions that she would be thinking of?
We see, this is quite interesting what Justice Chief Justice Mogoeng has done with this court ruling, is that he has also given the Speaker of Parliament perimeters that she needs to consider when deciding whether a motion of no confidence against the President should be conducted via secret ballot or should be conducted via an open ballot. And he speaks about the prejudicial circumstances that could prevail should a party member, an ANC member in this instance, go against the party's decision. But he also spoke about voting according to one's conscience and spoke about the role that MPs play with regards to being elected to Parliament. He kept on emphasizing that the powers that MPs have is not their powers. These are powers of the people. He spoke about Baleka Mbete, the Speaker of Parliament, as well, saying that the power that she has in deciding whether a motion of no confidence against the President and the ballot is the debate against a debate rather on a motion of no confidence and the ballot is conducted via secret ballot or open ballot is a power that does not belong to the Speaker of Parliament, but it's a power that belongs to the people of South Africa. And when she takes that decision, she must take into consideration what is best for the country, and now must not pledge allegiance to the party, the political party that has put her there. Chief Justice Mogoeng also spoke about the Constitution and spoke about the makeup of our electoral system, that we have a party-less system, which means that the MPs that are elected into Parliament are not elected directly by us as the electorate, but rather are elected by the parties themselves. It's the electorate vote parties into Parliament, and it is the parties who then decide on who will represent the party and carry out the mandate of the party in Parliament. But speaking about the political consequences and what happens now, we've seen what happened at the ANC's NEC meeting, after the last NEC meeting that took place, where Gwede Mantashe, the Secretary General of the party, said that the party will be closing ranks. Remember, even after the National Working Committee's extended meeting that took place after President Jacob Zuma reshuffled cabinet, they said that they will be closing rank. They will not be taking commands from the commander from another political party. These soldiers, these ANC soldiers, will not be taking commands from other political parties. It must be the ANC that decides. And this then brings the debate around, which COSATU, for instance, have said that the speakers, COSATU has indicated and said that ANC MPs must not vote with the opposition parties, although they believe that President Jacob Zuma should step down. ANC MPs, however, should not vote with opposition parties in Parliament. What they should do is rather have their own motion of no confidence, table their own motion of no confidence against the President. And it will be quite interesting to see how this unfolds and whether anyone within the ANC Parliamentary Caucus would be willing to do that. The ANC Parliamentary Caucus also had a meeting a few weeks ago where they spoke around this issue, and it seemed as though that the party will be closing ranks. And I guess the outcomes of the policy conference as well, and what is debated at the National Consultative Conference, would have some sort of impact in terms of what happens in Parliament and how MPs feel they should be voting, now that the Constitutional Court has made it clear that their conscience also plays a role when they make that vote of no confidence or vote of confidence in the President.
Aldrin, before you go, just quickly, Judge Mogoeng was very clear about the framework, and he touched briefly on issues of intimidation and issues of physical threats being made to MPs. How much weight would that bear on the decision that Baleka Mbete makes?
Well, he spoke about how, for instance, there must be a balance that is struck when there is a motion of no confidence, and you have what could be a consequence that a party member of Parliament makes a decision to vote against the President, which is against the party line, saying that there should be a counterbalance. If one of the repercussions is that that member loses their position in Parliament, what would that counterbalance be exactly? Does this mean that when there's an open ballot, let's say hypothetically, Baleka Mbete decides that the motion of no confidence and the ballot against the President will be done in an open space, and you have some ANC MPs who have spoken out quite openly, saying that President Jacob Zuma should resign. The person that's coming to mind now, just forgot the name right now. But there are some ANC MPs in Parliament who have come out and spoken out, and even wrote open letters and opinion pieces arguing why President Jacob Zuma should step down. When those MPs then decide, when the motion of no confidence is being heard and the secret ballot or the open ballot is being cast, will there be any repercussions? And if there are those repercussions, could they use this Constitutional Court's judgment and say that in this Constitutional Court judgment, Chief Justice Mogoeng said that the issues around consequences should be counterbalanced if it means that I will lose my job after I've decided to vote with my conscience and in the interest of the country, and believe that the President of the country has failed in his duties to lead this country. That'd be something quite interesting to see how exactly ANC MPs interpret this Constitution, especially that portion of this judgment.
Aldrin, thank you very much for that update and the sterling work that Aldrin Sampear is is doing outside the Constitutional Court. As you saw, it was rather busy. Yes, it was a landmark ruling. Of course, we've got reaction coming in from all around the country. Dr. Corne Miller is standing by to give us more reaction. But before we go to Parliament, let's just go back and listen to this ruling because it was such a landmark ruling.
When approached by the UDM to have the motion of no confidence in the President voted on by secret ballot, the Speaker said that neither the Constitution nor the rules of the National Assembly allow her to authorize a vote by secret ballot. To this extent, she was mistaken. Our interpretation of the relevant provisions of the Constitution and the rules make it clear that the Speaker does have the power to authorize a vote by a secret ballot in a motion of no confidence proceedings against the President in appropriate circumstances. The exercise of that power must be duly guided by the need to enable effective accountability, which is in the best interest of the people and obedience to the Constitution. To the extent that the Tlowama decision might have been understood to have held that a secret ballot procedure is not at all constitutionally permissible, that understanding is incorrect. The Speaker's decision was invalid and must be set aside. Turning to remedy, this Court has been asked to direct the Speaker, open quotes, to make all the necessary arrangements to ensure that a motion of no confidence is decided by secret ballot, including designating a new date for the motion to be debated, close quote. But no legal basis exists for that radical and separation of powers insensitive move. The Speaker has made it abundantly clear that she is not averse to a motion of no confidence in the President being decided upon by a secret ballot. She only lamented the perceived constitutional and regulatory reality that she lacked the power to authorize voting by secret ballot. Meaning, now that it has been explained that she has the power to do that which she is not averse to, she has the properly guided latitude to prescribe what she considers to be appropriate voting procedure in the circumstances. It may be necessary to add that her counsel reiterated during the hearing that the Speaker is not really opposed to a secret ballot. The President's counsel also said that the Constitution neither requires nor prohibits, but in reality permits a secret ballot. He went on to say a secret ballot does not necessarily hold adverse consequences for the President. It would thus be inappropriate to order the Speaker to have the motion of no confidence in the President conducted by secret ballot, as if she ever said that she would not do so, even if she had the power to do so, and even if circumstances plainly cry out for it. To order a secret ballot would trench separation of powers. Whether the proceedings are to be by secret ballot is a power that rests firmly in the hands of the Speaker, but exercisable subject to crucial factors that are appropriately seasoned with considerations of rationality. This Court cannot assume that she will not act in line with the legal position and conditionalities as now clarified by this Court. No legal or proper basis exists for that. In the result, we make the following order. 1. The United Democratic Movement is granted direct access. 2. It is declared that the Speaker of the National Assembly has the constitutional power to prescribe that voting in a motion of no confidence in the President of the Republic of South Africa be conducted by secret ballot. 3. The Speaker's decision of 6 April 2017 that she does not have the power to prescribe that voting in a motion of no confidence in the President be conducted by secret ballot is set aside. 4. The United Democratic Movement's request for a motion of no confidence in the President to be decided by secret ballot is remitted to the Speaker for her to make a fresh decision. 5, the Speaker and the President must pay the costs of the United Democratic Movement, the Economic Freedom Fighters, the Inkatha Freedom Party, and the Congress of the People, including costs of 2 council where applicable. I hand down this judgment.
Yep, it certainly had the nation sit up and take note and, well, surgically remove himself, some would say, from this decision and handing it back to Parliament in the guise of Speaker Balakambeta. Talking about Parliament, Alvis, let's go back there for more reaction now.
That's right. Dr. Corné Mulder, the Parliamentary Chief Whip of the Freedom Front Plus, is standing by. Very good morning to you, Doctor. You must be celebrating this morning.
Yes, we are quite excited about the judgment. I think it's a victory for transparency as well as for constitutionalism in South Africa. We really welcome this judgment and we think it will take us further in a very positive way.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean for you as the Freedom Front Plus, this victory by the opposition parties?
Well, I think we've just listened again to the judgment by the Chief Justice, and it's a very clear judgment. It's a very groundbreaking judgment because it says exactly what can be and should have been said by the Constitutional Court in the first instance. If you look at the judgment, for example, the court couldn't go any further than it did. For example, the judge makes it quite clear, and I understood it exactly to be the same. The court could never instruct Parliament to have a secret ballot, because if the court would do that, it would infringe on the position of the legislative branch of government. It couldn't do that. But the court made it very clear that the Speaker does have the discretion to order a secret ballot. And then the court also even went further to remind the Speaker of her own position by saying she was never against the idea of a secret ballot. She said, I'm not against that, but I cannot make provision for that because I'm not allowed to do so. Now the court has indicated she's allowed to do so, and we are waiting for that specific event to take place, that we can have a secret ballot. And we think it's very important. The specific other thing that the court basically said was when it made it very clear that members of Parliament in the first instance swear an oath of office to accept the Constitution and the law of the country, and that our first allegiance should be in terms of the Constitution and the people we serve and not the political parties that we represent. And this will now give opportunity to ANC members who feel strongly about their own position and their own conscience to vote in terms of that position and to take up the opportunity to vote in a secret ballot. So the Speaker must take that decision as soon as possible.
Now, earlier we had an analyst in studio, and they suggested that if a vote of no confidence is granted, it might be seen as unconstitutional. Your thoughts on that?
No, it's definitely not unconstitutional. If a vote is allowed to be in secret, it may be, in terms of the interpretation of the Chief Justice, it will be constitutional, and I think that's the way to go. For example, I am aware of, and many of our colleagues are aware of as well, that we were contacted by certain ANC members even before this case was brought to the Constitutional Court, who said to us, can't the opposition please approach the Constitutional Court to have this declared and to make it possible for them to have a secret ballot, because they are scared, they cannot vote in terms of their conscience. If they vote in terms of their conscience, they will be intimidated and they even may lose their jobs. Now it's not possible to do that. They'll be allowed to vote in terms of their conscience, and I think we will have a very good outcome in this respect. Time will tell what will happen. The Speaker will now have to apply her mind afresh. But I cannot see for 1 minute that she can come up again and say, no, I'm not going to allow that. You see, we have a problem in our Parliament. If you look at our constitutional dispensation, the 3 tiers of government, then the Speaker is the head of the legislative branch. He's on exactly the same level as the Chief Justice being the head of the judiciary, and the Deputy President to a certain extent as head of the executive, the President overarching in that sense. But we have a difficult situation where our Speaker has a dual role. If you look at, for example, what happens in the United Kingdom, the moment the Speaker is elected, the Speaker basically resigns from his or her party, takes an absolutely neutral position, not even attend caucus meetings of a political party, etc., to have that exact message of neutrality and to serve the Parliament and the legislative branch. In our situation, our Speaker remains the chairperson of the ruling party. And in that sense, we from time to time now see that wrong decisions are taken. And I believe that's exactly what happened in this case. The decision not to allow a secret ballot, I believe, was taken not in Parliament. It was taken at Lutuli House. And once again, we had the Constitutional Court now to come along and to rectify that and to indicate to the ruling party that they should respect the Constitution and they should respect the powers of Parliament itself.
I just want to rectify the question. It wasn't unconstitutional. He said it would be undemocratic. So would the same point still apply that you've mentioned now, just briefly?
If it's allowed, that it then would be undemocratic?
Yes.
No, definitely not. It will not be undemocratic. It will be a democratic process, and it will allow the members to vote in terms of their conscience. I'm aware that there are several members of the ANC that would like to vote in a secret ballot in support of a motion of no confidence. The political question is, and I know that Kosato has made the point that members of the ANC should not be seen to support the motion of the opposition. That's not the point. If the ANC feels seriously that we need to vote on a motion of no confidence, then the ANC is entitled in Parliament to bring their own motion of no confidence, and obviously they will have the support of the opposition parties as well. The important factor is now that once again it's a groundbreaking ruling, like we've had with the Nkanda affair, because we have been finding it very difficult in Parliament to keep the executive to account in terms of oversight, and we've been blocked in that respect by the ruling party, who in the first instance put party initiative ahead of what the Constitution expects of us when we swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution.
Dr. Mulder, thank you so much for your time and joining us in our parliamentary studios. You can now pop the champagne, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll do so.
It was Dr. Corne Mulder. He's the parliamentary chief whip of the Freedom Front Plus. There's lots and lots of reaction to this story, Eben.
I don't know if champagne if you're ready. It's a bit premature to pop the champagne. If I was the opposition, I'll wait until the speaker pronounces on that. Yeah. But I don't think anyone in the history of South Africa would have had such a singular focus as we're going to see with the Speaker in the weeks to come with regards to this issue. Of course, we've been asking South Africans, do they want to see a secret ballot, Elvis, in the no confidence vote? And almost 400 voters are saying overwhelmingly, yes, we want to see a secret ballot.
85% of you saying here in this country on the continent that you want to see a secret ballot.
That is a vast majority, and that kind of gauges the opinion. Of course, there are other views that talk about, this opens up a can of worms and makes it a little bit more difficult. But let's take a look at some of the tweets that are coming in. We've got a couple of these coming in, and this one from Mokhale Mayeko. He says to us, even if the judgment is in favor of the secret ballot, will ANC MPs really fall into that mantra? They won't, I guess. And he mentions the word loyalty. Loyalty is what he talks about. This one from Dupansu, who says, what are they scared of? Scared of losing the job and the big car, maybe, Dupansu. That's a fear that all of us have in this world. Makhotla Lemotlo says, yes, it's 100% convenient and democratic. South Africa needs accountable leadership. That one from Makhotla Lemotlo, talking, of course, to us about this. Lechasa comes, he says, secret ballot, only solution. Some other parliament members might be intimidated by those who enjoy state capture and junk status, says Lechasa. Junk status, nobody enjoys junk status. Nobody. That's just not right. Anyhow. Let's go back to Parliament. Now, Themba Godi is in Parliament and standing by from the APC, ready to give us reaction. A very good morning to you, Mr. Godi. Oh, well, it's still morning. Very good morning to you. Just give us your reaction to what has happened this morning.
Well, as the APC, we are happy that this very crucial constitutional matter has finally been clarified for us, but also for future generations to come, because as a country we now have constitutional certainty in terms of the separation of powers, that how we vote in Parliament is a determination that Parliament itself should make. So there can be no confusion, there can be no contestation. The ball is back in the court of the Speaker, so to speak, who should then decide how we proceed with this particular vote.
In your discussions with opposition parties and with ANC MPs, not the members of the executive, what's the sense that you've been getting from them?
Well, look, I think from the opposition side, I think there is almost unanimity in terms of which way to go. But in relation to members of the ruling party, you know, with their national conference coming, there are all sorts of contestations that are taking place. Some are happy, some are unhappy. But in terms of what will happen on the actual date of the voting on a motion of no confidence, I think it is a ball that is still up there in the air. No one can say with certainty which way they will vote. However, what is important, I think it's the reminder that the Constitutional Court has given all of us that we are members of parliament representing our people and at all times should act in their best interests. However, what is in the best interest of the people is to a large extent always a subjective analysis depending on where you are. But from where we're standing as the APC, we're saying that public office, public leadership, must have integrity and must always serve the best interests of the people. And if we look at what we've experienced in the last 22 years, is that the elite have actually benefited from the freedom that our people have, and yet the ordinary people, those in the rural areas, those who are living in shacks, have actually not seen the dividend of freedom. And if there's anything that is wrong with government currently and for which we need substantive action, it's ensuring that our people, ordinary people, can also say that they are free, not as a matter of theory, but because their material conditions have improved.
As the APC, are you for or against secret ballots? And if that secret ballot had to go ahead, what do you think would be the outcome?
Well, look, first and foremost, as the APC, we believe that those who represent the people should have the courage of their convictions. They don't need the cover of a secret ballot to represent the people honestly and display their commitment to the cause of the people. So for us, it is neither here nor there. What is important, it is that the outcome of that vote should actually determine where the majority of us as MPs are vis-a-vis what is in the best interest of our people, especially in terms of strengthening governance, fighting corruption, ensuring that we have policies that are pro-poor, ensuring that we have policies that ensure that the majority of our people also benefit from the freedom that we have, which has actually only benefited a tiny minority, and yet it was the majority that actually served, suffered, and sacrificed for the freedom that we have.
Mr. Gordy, I thank you very much for joining us. We've run out of time. We've got to get onto the top of the hour, but thank you for coming through and giving us your views on what's been a very important day in news and politics here in South Africa. Of course, the decision by the Speaker that she doesn't have the powers was set aside by Justice Mogoeng. That's if you've just joined us. We've had reaction from all political parties. You'll be able to watch all of that back on the show and the shows to follow. Of course, news anchors are getting ready, as myself and Elvis are preparing to stand down and maybe get an afternoon nap in, Elvis, because it's been a hectic morning.
It's been a hectic morning. It's been a secret ballot, and it almost reminds me of a secret song somewhere. But that's where we got to leave it for today.
This man always has a song in his heart. I always think he's about to have an affair. Anyhow, we're going to see you again tomorrow. Don't miss Newsroom then. From myself and Elvis, see you then. Bye.